Perhaps we need some outside universal threat to make us recognize this common bound. I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world.
Good evening and welcome to Spaced Out Radio tonight. My name is Dave Scott, and it is Science Bob and Friends tonight. 3 hours of UFO talk tonight because of the hearings. And in hour number 3, we're going to want to get some of your comments as well that we will read on air, and we'll discuss those topics as well. This is going to be a big show. We got a big panel for you. And let's get right to it because we got to say hello to each and every one of you, including Over the Hump with a gold medal tonight, Race Fan with a silver, Marty Burback, or make that, no, Over the Hump means Wednesday. Race Fan with a gold medal, Marty Burback with a silver, Kitty Caddywhack with a nice bronze medal tonight, Tim Mothman and his goatee, 2 separate entities. Cool Arrow, nice to see you. Gong Show is back. Gong Show will be signing autographs after the show. Line up to the left of the studio, if you don't mind, to the left of the studio. Bar Madison, how you doing? Lulu Bell, nice to see you. And yes, alien lives matter. Thank you, Lulu Bell. I love that political statement. That is wonderful. That works here. And B, Little Cam over on YouTube, you know, he did 3,346 jumping jacks in an hour and a half. Yeah, didn't puke once. Good for you, Lil Cam. Frankie B and Mel WD-40 is here lubing us up for tonight's show with that special alien lube he has because you always want to go into a show nice and smooth. See, Science Bob hates that rigidness. He wants a smooth show, nothing rigid, nothing uncomfortable. So lube him up. Science Bob slides right in, and we get a great show. That's the way it's going to go. Thanks, Mel WD-40. Chris. Teen, nice to see you. Thanks for coming on in. Biofuel Brad has returned. Biofuel Brad will be signing autographs after the show as well. Line up to the right of the studio, if you don't mind, to the right of the studio. Lisa Smith, nice to see you. Mama Catherine, mwah! I love you, my dear. I hope you have a wonderful evening, and thank you for the love this morning. All right, Deb Aruni, how are you? Richard Minnick, Stephanie Kenny Blankenship, and Karen in the Woo Train. Good to have you all here. Noble Patrick and Road Flare. Good to see you all. Noble Patrick again, because I just like saying Noble Patrick. As for Matt, Robert Lamoth. Good to have you both here as we continue on with our roll call. Number 14 in your program tonight, starting at center ice from Stockholm, Sweden. Lars Jansson. There he is. Moving on, let us say hello next to, well, let's take a look here. Scrolling on down. Lee the Bee and Dragonfly. Nice to have you both here. Fapster, what's happening, my man? Good to see you. As we continue on with our roll call here, hi, Cosmic Joe, Paramarv, Mr. Cowley, welcome back to the show. Oh, Mr. Cowley loves his spaced out radio. Good rhyme there. Thomas Rock, Human Carl, how you doing, Human Carl? A great veteran of the United States Air Force. Thank you for your service, my friend. Spiraling 69, E. Will, welcome to SOR Chat. And let's see here. Who else do we got? Operation Shutdown. Nina Williams. Good to have you both here. And Kimberly Burgess, Pam Harris, Candy, JSCO. Thank you all for coming on in. Hi, Ozzy, Paramarv. Algaray over on Twitch ran 27 miles on the treadmill while watching the UFO hearings. His legs are jacked for tonight. Asteroid, thanks for coming on in. Jay Truthseeker, Search and Destroy, Alien Critter, Matthew Goodka, Android. Nice to have you all here. Jeff Steve Garvey, he'll hit a home run for you. Laura Lobbs, Twiggy, welcome to SOR Chat. And Ethanol, nice to see you. Purple-haired Pixie Lara, thanks for joining us. Hello and welcome to the radio and podcast side of Spaced Out Radio tonight. My name is Dave Scott. We are in roll call before our panel on the UFO hearings. Let's get it going. And there is Jessica S., Mark Sanchez and his collection of Hawaiian shirts. Nice to see you as we continue on. Mistral, welcome to SOR Chat. And who else we got? Ms. Mary, looking lovely tonight. Mike Rivers, how you doing? Jason Albertson, welcome to SOR Chat. And who else do we got here? John Lamb, good to see you. We're running out of time. Area 53, thank you for kicking off the super chat tonight. Very much appreciate the love and support. Throw those hands up. Let's rock. Of Central British Columbia to you listening around the world. This, my friends, is Spaced Out Radio. I am your host, Dave Scott, sitting in the captain's chair of SOR headquarters. We welcome you to tonight's show on our terrestrial affiliates around North America, digitally on every major podcast network. Our website, spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you. Rock out the bubble, read the news, fire, check out our swag as well. You can follow us on X at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio, and on Patreon in the Space Travelers Club. Tonight's show is brought to you by Chive Charities. Help make the world 10% happier by visiting Chive Charities today. You can find them on our website. We got a power show of UFO information tonight after the big hearings in Washington, D.C. We got a great panel. We're getting ready to rage with you tonight. Did you love it? Did you hate it? We're going to get into it all in moments. We're going 3 hours. We are going 3 hours. There's not going to be any swamp dweller tonight. This topic is too important, and we got a great panel. So we're going to kick things off right now. Now, whether you thought this was a nothing burger or whether you thought this was some great information, the latest UFO hearing was carried out by Representative Nancy Mace and her castmates on UAP hearings. Now, were there any blockbuster, bombshell, newsworthy events, evidence? No, there wasn't. But there were some positives coming out of this. Now, I have been known to be Mr. Negative regarding these hearings. You know, it's been uncomfortable. It's made me shake my head and, shake my fist at the cloud saying, what are we doing here? Like, really, what are we doing here? But we're going to break it all down tonight. The good, the bad, the ugly. We got a power group here led by Science Bob, Dr. Bob McGwier, because this is his regular monthly event show that we call Science Bob and Friends. We have Courtney Marchesani, who will join us, Josh Rutledge, a great podcaster and friend of this show, and our UFO reporter, Tim James. Sweet Robbie G will be along momentarily as well. Let's bring in the panel. Science Bob, nice to have you back on the big show tonight. How are you, my friend?
Hey, hope everybody's doing good. Courtney, were you at the event today?
No, I decided to wait because I have to go to Seoul and I'm working on some things for Seoul, so I had to prioritize. But I watched the whole hearing at home, like all of you. Did you go, Bob?
No. I haven't watched it here. We had an X Space and a bunch of other stuff going at the same time.
Nice.
Well, let's kick things off here, Science Bob. I would call the information a little bit of a nothing burger. But I would also say there were a lot of positives coming out of this hearing, including the fact, Bob, before we get your take, about the questioning. I thought the questioning today by the Congress people who took this in was the best we have seen. It wasn't about little gray aliens or little green men running around. It wasn't about Venus or swamp gas. They were hard-hitting questions today. Science Bob, let's lead with you since it's your show.
If you heard at least one of the contestants thank Jeremy Corbell for getting all the witnesses there, you know who prepped them with what questions. I mean, it was clear that Jeremy and others had prepped those people with everything they were going to ask. And so it's good. It's good to have positive people who want a good outcome, helping the Congress people not look silly. I am not as negative as you are, but that's not unusual. So we learned it was good to have everyone under oath. Lou did not say he was the director of ATIP. He did not say he was the director of OSAP. He didn't mention those two names. He said that he was an intelligence officer working on behalf of the National Security Council out of the White House on a waived unacknowledged special access program, that's a great thing. And we know that he came into what was the remnants of ATIP after OSAP closed out. He was hired kind of on the transition. And so that's interesting. Lou did a good job of answering questions. He was careful. He told stuff he knew. And my opinion is the winner for information was our esteemed reporter who had written 212 pages of excellent information and got it all into the congressional record, and he stirred up a lot of interest. I thought that Higgins I don't remember, somewhere in the South, I forgot where he's from, did a good job of interacting with him, roasted him, busted him, trying to twist his arm and get stuff out of him. And Schellenberger says, I will not reveal my sources. And he was straightforward about it.
I loved that.
Yep.
As a journalist myself, I absolutely loved that, Bob.
Yep.
That he really showed the importance, where a lot of people out there, Bob, will say, give us the names, show us the proof. We've heard it thousands of times on this show, other shows out there, online posts, especially on X. And here we are now really pushing the envelope of this entire engagement, where he's saying, no, I'm not giving up my sources. Even to you, I will go to jail to protect my sources. I loved it.
Yep, that was good. And then we had Admiral Tim Gallaudet, who said in much more depth than he had before the same story, including some of the unusual aspects of it, given how quickly they had wiped it out. But he told the impact of all those UAP nonstop on the Teddy Roosevelt aircraft carrier group in much more detail, and that they almost had to stop training for their deployment to the Middle East and all sorts of other stuff. So all of them brought good stuff except for Gold, who was a nothing burger who shouldn't have been there.
Oh, I would totally agree with you. Courtney Marchesani, let's bring you in here now, because I know you called me. You were all excited about what our intrepid reporter was doing on there. So let me know, what was your thoughts of today?
Oh, I thought it was a mix of really great and a mix of really provocative things that got entered into Congress for the first time. We heard about hybrids. We heard about people connecting with the craft through a mind-body connection. These are things that are on the fringe in the community in UAP studies, but they got entered into Congress, so I thought that was interesting. I think that Schellenberger is taking a big risk with this 12-page document that he submitted. There's no stamps on it. It doesn't look official by any means. It was submitted, it sounds like, at the last minute, and they were all just receiving it and reading it real time during the hearing, which that was a bit unsettling. So I think that's going to be evaluated and critiqued by a lot of different people. And I think that document's probably going to come into question. When I was reading it, though, after the hearing, and I know other people have thought this as well, I downloaded the 12 pages. I downloaded the 212 pages too and tried to read all of those. And there's some of our friends, who are in that report, the 214-page report, including Grant Cameron. He was mentioned several times. So, of course, I picked up on that. But I think the question of who the witness is going to be really important, obviously. And Schellenberger said he would never give up his source, but I still think that source is probably going to come into question because the document doesn't look like an official document. So I think that's going to cast some doubt on it. Those are my main thoughts. I thought the most interesting points and takeaways that came through were around the messaging by the witnesses, that they wanted it to be clearly known that obviously there's a national security issue. They also wanted it to be known in the record that there are psychological programs being used against all of us. And one of the main points that I think was being made, that there was actually a public affairs person who handled all the UAP requests at the DOD, and that was made a point of several times. And why would that?
She was the person who was influence operator trained for her degree.
Yeah, so that was clear. They wanted that to come across as one of the points, that psychological operations have been very involved for many decades. So I thought there were a lot of really positive things to take away. I think for the longtime UAP advocates, there was nothing new. I do think people are a bit shocked about some of the more provocative things that came up, like hybrids and the mind-body connection and connecting to the craft. And I don't think we learned anything more, though. And Bob, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think we learned anything about the biologics. That wasn't answered, and what the biologics might be. Those all questions about opinions. I did think it was very interesting that when the whole panel was questioned about the notion of hybrids, they all said no. They were not aware of any kind of hybridization program. So that was also very interesting.
I thought it was interesting that Luna asked all the woo questions.
And so did Boebert. Lauren Boebert.
Boebert and Luna, that's true.
Yes, loved it.
Yeah.
I think it's important to bring the woo in. I really do, because they're realizing that they open the door for the understanding that this is a lot more than just dots in the sky doing zigzags, and the technology, the Tic Tacs. And I think we saw that. I want to get Josh Rutledge in here. Josh, I know you were watching this and preparing for this hearing. What was your overall thoughts?
I would have to agree with kind of, Courtney and Science Bob's breakdown as far as, no new information was given. Although we did hear about the button, the disc-shaped, UFO. I think that was from the Admiral Gallaudet. I'm probably pronouncing that incorrectly. But I mean, so there was a little bit of, let's say, additional information in that regard, but for the most part, it was pretty much the same stuff. But I think that for me, the big factors here are number one, I think Science Bob and both Courtney said the same thing, is that these people are all under oath. So now this is now officially a part of a record. So basically everything that's in Lou's book, right, was circumstance, but now he's coming before Congress. He's under oath, and he's repeated a lot of the content that's in the book. And so it almost, solidifies maybe some of the content that's in the book. Also the fact that some of the information he gave supports David Grush's testimony from last year. And so again, it's almost like confirmation for Grush that some of the information he gave, Lou Elizondo is now supporting under oath as well. I also think that from a public eye perspective, although those that are, neck deep in the UAP topic, there was no real, gotcha moments in the hearing. I think from a keeping it in the public eye perspective, it was a good day today because it's been a year since the last hearing. And this is, putting it back in kind of the public media, mass media, local news stations talking about the hearing and so on and so forth. So it kind of keeps it in the public eye for those people who are, let's say, on the fringe of the topic, who are just kind of loosely interested in what's going on or what's happening.
Fully agree. Sweet Robbie G, we're going to bring you in here now. And I'm going to get you to turn down your speaker a little bit because we are getting a little bit of feedback off your microphone there. But if you could, Rob, break down what you thought was going on.
Okay, yeah. So for me, we broadcasted right here on Space Out Radio earlier today. So I got to watch it while watching the chat at the same time. But my takeaway was it just seemed like, I don't know. I didn't get that feeling, the same feeling from the last hearing. It felt to me like the participants were unprepared as far as for their testimony. Yeah, Lou Elizondo on there, who's talked on 1,000 podcasts, and he couldn't seem to get his words straight. He couldn't seem to get his message straight. Like he didn't know what he wanted to deliver at this hearing. And I thought this would be the moment where he would shine. And he actually didn't shine for me. And it was just strange to me. Schellenberg did come through. I thought he did well because he was able to bring things up that hadn't necessarily been spoke about, just things he'd uncovered through his reporting. So I liked his take on some of the things. I'll go with Josh on this was a win because we had another hearing. I think that was great. Mike Gold, the NASA plant. I don't know why he was there. I mean, I guess he's no longer with NASA, and apparently I heard he was done 13 years with OSAP, so I think that's why they included him. Otherwise, he really didn't need to be there. And then Gallaudet, he made some impactful statements at the end of 2022 about the alien presence, and has done so, occasionally since then. And I was just surprised that he didn't bring more to the table. Just a lot of I'll talk to you behind the scenes sort of thing. So I didn't really get that vibe from this group of individuals, although it's like Josh said, it's another time where you get to put things on the record. So that's cool. But what really I did like about the hearing was the fact that the Congress members were engaged and knew the right questions to ask. They even brought up things like the craft being alive. And these are just things that you would have never thought that they'd be asking. And they asked these questions on their own. So they were excited to be there. You could tell there were some new faces there that really wanted to dig into the topic. So, I mean, it's hopeful from that standpoint, but just the performance overall from the participants, I just didn't. I felt like they probably could have represented better, is what I'll say.
Right. And finally, from our panel, we got Tim here, Tim James from our UFO report. Tim, what was your overall thoughts? I know you were studying up on it pretty hard today.
Yeah, I was doing it back and forth. I was at work, so had one computer going watching it. So yeah, I kind of agree with Rob. I found it intriguing, and I thought that the panel, not the witnesses obviously, but the panel were asking very good questions, and I was actually intrigued from what I saw of that. Lou, yeah, kind of, I hate to say it, but it sounded like the same old, and I think he was tripping over his feet a little bit. And Gallaudet, I always pronounce his name wrong. I found him to be the kind of the more of the pointy stick in there. I found, for me anyway, it was interesting because he seemed to kind of, be the one that was stepping in front of everybody else, so to speak. Gold, don't have any idea what that was about. And yeah, I thought it was good. And interesting for me because I'm relatively newer to this than the whole panel is. So yeah, I was just trying to absorb what I could and understand what was coming at me. But yeah, very interesting. And again, the hearing's done. It's all on record. these are under oath. These people are under oath. So yeah, I was pretty intrigued by it all, actually.
Well, let's get to the elephant in the room as we got about 4 minutes to go here. Science Bob, we're going to kick things off to you. And this was with Mike Gold. This was somebody we had never heard of in the UFO world before. We know he worked for Robert Bigelow. We know he worked for NASA. We know that he has seen intriguing things that have made him want to talk about this. And literally, he brought nothing to the table. It was just like one of those, I'm happy to be here. I'm about to go on a roller coaster type of attitude. And I'm still trying to figure it out. Bob, you know this insider kind of information. What's your group saying?
I thought the one and only interesting thing that Gold brought was they wouldn't have had a NASA panel at all had Bill Nelson not insisted on it. That was interesting, that Bill Nelson actually insisted on NASA participating. But look, NASA needs to get off their butt and open the vault and show us the pictures. End of story.
Is it just
and
that
we knew that Gold worked for Bigelow and OSAP and earlier, and had worked for him at Bigelow Aerospace for a while. And so the single most interesting factoid, and where I think Lou screwed up, was the connection between Lockheed Martin direct through to Bigelow. He had never before confirmed that Lockheed was the source and Bigelow was the recipient. And when asked directly, he failed and said yes. I think he just crossed the line.
Well, getting back to Mike Gold for a second, Bob, and we'll get Josh to jump in on this. One of the things that I have argued about for a long time is the lack of transparency from NASA. And here Mike Gold is with a straight face saying NASA is the most transparent of all government agencies, that they are so transparent you could see right through them. They have nothing to hide. Josh, what was your take on that?
Yeah, I mean, if you recall the NASA report that came out when they kind of analyzed the videos around, I think, the Go Fast and the gimbal, basically, in their words, debunked everything as being just like a bird flying, and it was moving only 12 miles an hour or whatever. It seems for me, NASA seems more kind of towing that kind of science line of, it pushes against the fringe of what as science we are willing to accept or explore. And so they're just going to kind of, gloss over any possibility of anything being outside of what we understand from a physics perspective or science or whatever the case may be. So the fact, the statement that NASA is so transparent, I scoffed at that statement because of, what I just highlighted, and just the general just kind of disinterest that I've seen from most of anybody from the NASA space around really looking at those uncommon possibilities of answers for some of these things.
The nice thing I heard was that they pushed back on Gallaudet pushed back on the 20-mile-an-hour balloon. He said, look, there were hundreds of things on radar and every other kind of instrument all day, every day for months. And we know they were not going 12 knots and they weren't balloons.
Courtney, I'm going to get your response when we return. We're going to continue with Mike Gold. We got a lot more topics to get into here on Spaced Out Radio's special panel on Science Bob and Friends with Dr. Bob McGwier. Here on the big show, we got Sweet Robbie G. We have Josh Rutledge. We have Courtney Marchesani, Tim James, and myself. We're going to bring the news, starting with Courtney, right after this on Spaced Out Radio. Stay tuned, everybody.
Can I ask Bob a question right now?
Yeah,
Or
go
no?
right ahead.
So, Bob, when they brought up the 1980 sub incident, what did your spidey senses say?
Oh, I thought about Bob at that point too.
Who wasn't? Who didn't think about Bob?
Remind me of which one it was. I'm not remembering.
Gallaudet was talking about the 1980s
Oh, yes,
where it was a
yes,
Russian.
the big craft bigger than the ship. So, unfortunately, mine was 2008.
Okay, that's what I wanted to ask. I didn't know if you'd weigh in or not. I thought it was before your incident, but I just wanted to double check.
So 1998 was my USO in the USS Hampton, which both Tim Gallaudet and I had set sail on. Both of us have been riders on the Hampton. But no, that was 1998. In 2008, I was on a cities tour, port tour from Thailand to Vladivostok on the flagship of the 7th Fleet, which is the USS Blue Ridge, which is a helicopter carrier.
And I also wanted to thank you for signing the letter of support for the scientist list. I saw your name on there, so thank you for doing that.
The guys who were behind it, Justin and what's his name, the caucus, the UAP caucus leader. Anyway, they talked. Lester. Yes, sorry, Lester. If you're looking,
okay.
I'm
That's what you have me around.
I'm tired. Okay, anyway, so they asked me to go out and get lots of folks, and I sent notes to everyone in my Rolodex, and they didn't want to be publicly associated.
You're kidding.
To a person. No.
Wow.
You know, you really see who steps up when it matters. So you did it. And I wanted to say thank you for that because I saw your name on there and I went, that's awesome.
Well, Gary thanked me and Tim thanked me. So there you go. That was enough.
Good.
I think we should all take the time to recognize the nice shirt and tie combination that Lester Nair had on. He was looking fine.
He looked great, man.
He did. It was a great shirt.
So maybe we can talk about it later. So Matt made a lot of noise before, but there was a big disconnect between the level of the noise and the length of the hit. It didn't make it out of the infield.
Right.
It just was not that big a deal.
Hey, Rob, I don't know what it is, but every couple seconds when somebody's speaking we're getting a little squelching coming from your mic. I don't know what's going on there, but
my mic is muted, buddy. Can't be me.
Well, it was you because I unmuted you.
No, it's not me. My mic is muted. Was
weird. So weird.
But
I'm still blaming you. Oh man, this is a great panel tonight. Great panel. Lots of knowledge here. But yeah, we're I'm going to be honest. I'm happy about today. It gave us really nothing, but it gave us tidbits. By the way, here's an interesting point. Did you see the two YouTube powerhouses in the UFO world sitting together?
Oh yeah, but I knew they were going to sit together.
In Jesse Michaels and Chris Ramsey.
Yeah, I knew they were going to sit together. That and Peter Scoffish from the new leader of Soul was right behind Admiral Gallaudet.
Oh, that's who that was.
Yeah.
Okay.
Bald head. Perfect head.
Tim agrees. All right. We got about a minute here, guys. I'm surprised George Knapp wasn't there.
I've got to tell you what, I think his Netflix gig is doing well. They're probably filming newer episodes.
Oh, yeah.
I'm worried. I got to tell you what, I'm worried watching him walk around in those episodes. He not a spring chicken.
Thank you tonight to Ken, Joe, and Area 53 for the great super chats tonight. Ken with a nice Canadian chat there. That's a nice $5 right there, a blue $5.
Gotta love it.
Gotta love it. Thank you very much for the love.
You get that with a little bass?
No, you can if you try hard enough. You know, we're coming back in 4 seconds here, guys. Second half hour of Spaced Out Radio is kicked off. Thank you for joining us. My name is Dave Scott. A special edition of Science Bob and Friends on today's UAP hearings in Washington, D.C. Before we get back to the panel, we want to remind you that if you miss portions of this show or others, you can check out our free archives by going to youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Just do me the favor, hit that subscribe button. Our website, spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, read the news wire, check out our swag as well. Follow us on X at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on Patreon in the Space Travelers Club. Here's Science Bob and Friends. We're breaking down the UFO report. We got Sweet Robbie G from After Hours. We have Courtney Marchesani, an intrepid researcher from the UFO report, Tim James, and podcaster extraordinaire, we have Josh Rutledge. Everybody, thank you for being here tonight. And Courtney, right before the break, I had to cut you off. I know you wanted to make a comment about former NASA official Mike Gold, who really was. We're still wondering what his purpose on the panel was. I'll turn it over to you.
I think he wanted to raise awareness about the ASRS, the aerial, reporting system. I heard him trying to say this is basically our one way of doing reporting and catching these things. But I saw a presentation over the summer at Contact in the Desert about it, and it's damn near impossible to put in all your search queries and link them together. It's almost like having to have programming language. So I thought he tried to bring that across, but that whole platform is virtually impossible to use. And so one of the things I wanted to, that's why I was raising my hand. One of the things I wanted to point out was that these are the types of breakdowns that I think that these systems are having across the board: intelligence, signet, mucin, human, all the things that are coming across in these reportings from different people, is there's no cross collaboration on any of it. So while I think that he was trying to promote, their reporting system, it's damn near impossible to use. And the other thing that I heard in Contact at the Desert at Todd Curtis's presentation is the NTSB records no NHI crashes at all. And we just heard in Congress Lou say that they exist and crash retrievals exist. So there's these two cognitive dissonances that are out there, and they're not communicating with one another. And I think that was one of the biggest failures of the hearing, is that there really is no way forward to hear, progress. It's really just reporting about the failure. So that was just one of the things I wanted to key into for people who are listening to it and what their takeaways might be.
Courtney, I want to get your take on this, and then I'm going to hit up the rest of the panel. Maybe I misheard this, but when he was talking about reporting sites, I believe he made a comment, Mike Gold that is, that there was no really good reporting sites out there. I thought that was a real slap in the face to MUFON, to New Fork, to APRO, and all of these other reporting sites out there, basically saying that, because they're almost like, the point that I got was, you're civilian, so you stay over there. We're going to do the real work here, and you guys don't have any reports that are of influence for us. Maybe I heard it wrong, but that's the way I took it. What was your thoughts?
Yeah, I thought he continued to go back to NASA and say they're the best at the science and the atmospheric stuff, and all the cameras and all these pictures that people are taking and even videos can't be used. And he keep turning it back to NASA saying they're the scientific experts. Well, maybe if their reporting system was easier to use, and that would be more familiar to people. And a lot of people don't even know about it. So I think that he continued to try to say NASA's are the experts. But I also think that by discrediting people like Newfork, which everybody thinks is one of the best reporting, I mean, you always hear that from everybody. I think he was trying to do the promotional thing. And then he asked for funding for Artemis. Did you hear that? He said, please fund the Artemis mission. So he was there also as kind of like public relations. That's how it came off as, a little haughty to me. That's just my opinion. I might be wrong.
all the scuttlebutt, the NASA scuttlebutt from those in and around the aerospace industry is Artemis is about to be killed.
Wow. Sweet Robbie G, what was your thoughts on Mike Gold basically saying there was no real reporting site to go on?
Man, Mike Gold was he was just selling, man. He was up there selling, man. He was selling science, which is okay. I mean, we definitely need science in the conversation, but it would just, as Courtney said, he was just sticking it to NASA, like NASA's the way to go. However, one thing that did stick out to me is that he did make a comment about being stigmatized about bringing up UAP or wanting to approach the subject. He did briefly mention that, and I thought, okay, he's starting off good, and then he kind of went into the whole sales pitch about how funding could help this, and if we just took this path, we could use this program to identify UAP, and it's the same thing they talked about during the NASA hearing. So I thought he was going to do something different, and he actually just ended up being a NASA tool.
Yeah, I didn't appreciate that whatsoever on that. Tim, your thoughts?
Yeah, exactly. Everything that I saw was, he seemed to be the odd man out. He was the square peg in the round hole. Everybody seemed to be there for, the right reason. And I found that every once in a while too. He was like that guy that comes to the convention and he doesn't really want to be there, but he's told to be there by his bosses. And promote. And, maybe you can get some donations and stuff going. Yeah. I just found him to be, shouldn't even have been there as far as I was concerned.
Well, let's move on to the other kind of weirdness. I don't know about you guys, but I do want to get into Elizondo and especially Schellenberger in the next half hour. But there were some good things that Tim Gallaudet said, but I was pretty much wondering, Josh, about the idea that he continued to really not say anything. It was like he was afraid to speak. Like they would ask him a question and he'd go, yes, that's right. No, not really. It was very short-sighted. What did you think, Josh?
Yeah, I mean, the thing I think it echoes across really the three of them that were up there was that they have other information that they're unwilling to share in a public forum, right? And I think that's what I heard mostly from Dr. Guillemet. I'm totally going to butcher his last name, but I mean that's what I heard from him. Is every time they would call on him to ask a question, it was always, well, I've got more information, I just can't tell you in a public setting. We kind of heard the same thing from Lou and from Schellenberger as well. So I mean, although I understand the concern around, every time they called on him, we didn't really get any information. But I also think kind of the points that I made earlier around the reason for the hearing, I think was just really to give new players, because as I think it was Science Bob mentioned, there were some new faces, right, that were there today. And then also to give these new voices a way to be kind of read in or under oath for Congress purposes. But I really didn't think that we were going to ever really hear anything from a public perspective that was going to be shock and awe from anybody that was on the panel, just because of their agreements and their non-disclosures and all of that kind of stuff.
Bob, your thoughts on Gallaudet?
Tim's a good guy. I know him a little bit. Courtney and I saw him in New York at the Inquiry into Anomalous Phenomena, and he gave a good talk there. He told us about his time on a submarine and the things he'd heard about. So we heard that story first when we were in New York. And so since then, he's been steady Eddie. He is advising the surface autonomous vehicle for the ocean being done by the Galileo project under a new team called Seeker. And so he's actively involved. He's a good guy, but I just, he added more color to stories he had already told.
Were you impressed with his testimony?
Yeah, he did a good job. I would love to hear more. I mean, so I heard from him for the first time 2 orbs over the Omaha and where it was. I bet he was not supposed to say where it was, but he said where it was, and he told about the 2 orbs. And after that, he says, I got to shut my mouth. It's classified, like usual. And I got to tell you what, Nancy Mace tweeted in the middle of the testimony, if I hear I can't talk about it here now, I'm going to scream. In the middle of her hearing, she tweeted that out. It was great.
She had, whoever her PR person was, whether she was running her X account during the hearings or whether or not it was her assistant, they were brilliant. I was retweeting everything that she was putting on. She may be my new favorite American politician after this. Honestly, what a pit bull that Nancy Mace was. Courtney, let's get you in here on Nancy Mace. The way she handled it, the questions that she asked, you could tell that A, she did her homework, and B, that she wanted answers. She wasn't up there to mess around. She wasn't there to talk about Venus or everything, that has been, made fun of over the years. I see you smiling. I'm sure you were happy with Nancy Mace and the way she attacked this.
Well, I think that she was saying very publicly, I want to talk to people who have seen some shit. So she put the call out there. She was very brazen about it. We heard scuttlebutt from people behind the scenes that the hearings were going to get canceled. So because of pressure, right? And so she was able to push that through and do her leadership move to get the hearings even set. They weren't even on the calendar. Not a lot of people noticed that. I did want to comment on what Todd Curtis just said, though, in the chat, because this is important, because he's the one that gave the presentation in the Contact in the Desert. What he was doing in his presentation was showing that there were actual cases in ASRS. So thank you, Todd, for correcting that. I just want to make sure that you know that I'm correcting that for the viewers. Go to ASRS, check it out, do the whole thing. Anyway, with Mace, I think that she obviously was prepared. I do think that she was educated on the topics. I think that she pushed the envelope. I think that when she got the same old answers and the same old things, she continued to push different questions to try to get answers. You saw that with, I think it was Higgins as well. He tried to ask different questions to get answers in a way that would not put people in the limelight or name names. And so I do think she did a good job. I thought there were some concerning things actually that got brought up in the hearing, and I don't know if anybody else picked up on them or not. But one of the things I did hear get entered in, it was just a side note, was about people having religious experiences and that they have these encounters, and if they're religious or faithful, that the encounters stop. That was one of the things that got entered in. There wasn't a lot of commentary about it, but I know it was entered in very intentionally. So that's one of the things that I think is concerning. I don't know about anybody else on the panel, but I think that they should have kept religion out of it. I wish she would have and not brought that up. That's
not going to happen with conservative Republicans in this Congress. They wear their religion on their sleeve.
Well, there's a couple things that Nancy Mace said right off the bat when she started firing. When she mentioned Immaculate Constellation, she said that she got a warning from Anna Paulina Luna about even bringing up the topic, that she could get in trouble for this. And she literally threw her hands up and said, "Come at me, bro." I loved it. Rob, what was your thoughts on that?
Laughable moment. I saw a lot of them, being humorous with the subject and kind of having fun with it. So, hey, I like that kind of talk. That's all good for me.
Anybody else want Tim? Let's get your opinion.
I love her. She was awesome. She tackled it, and yeah, I like the way she approached it, and like Courtney said, push the envelope. And yeah, she just came out, and it was like she wasn't messing around. I mean, she gave that impression to me, at least. And yeah, I thought, okay, she kind of scared me a little bit. Like, I don't think I'd want to be on the receiving end of that. But yeah, she's definitely a pit bull, and I thought she did a really good job.
I don't know if you saw the tweet afterwards. She took a picture of Tim Burchett, the way he was walking, and then put a picture up from the Bluff Creek Sasquatch. Okay. And I'm going to read this tweet because it's so funny. She goes, my colleague at Tim Burchett has been a steadfast advocate of transparency in the UAP space. But my friends, I'm still afraid all that might be to distract us from his ties to a certain other elusive creatures. And there's a picture of Sasquatch right beside it. I have retweeted it at Spaced Out Radio on X. I thought it was hilarious. Bob, your thoughts on the line of questioning by Nancy Mace today?
Oh, she was barely containing her frustration. She was well-versed, knew her script. She and her staff had prepared her very well. She knew the things that she wanted to accomplish and get on the record so that she could help craft legislation. And just before I forget about it, Tim Burchett introduced new whistleblower law into the Congress.
Now, I have a question about that. Is that under their former Transparency Act, Bob? Because they already had submitted some legislation and it didn't even, get a review. Is it an update?
It's definitely an update, but look, this is Tim doing his thing. He isn't going to be independent. He's going to try to stir stuff up.
Well, in looking at a lot of the comments that Nancy Mace made today, she talked very tough about her disappointment in Arrow and where the money for the budget was going. Tim, I know you.
What money? We don't even know how much.
They didn't. They said they don't even know what their budget is, and they don't know who works for them. Now, come on.
Mm-hmm.
They don't know who's on the advisory board.
Well, the point that I'm getting at, and I agree with you guys, I'm not denying that, but just the way she said it, like basically, we're taking millions of dollars that we could assume to put into a project, and we're being denied everything that they're doing. Mm-hmm. We don't know the study. We don't know what they're doing. We don't know what the money is for. Like, it was nice to see her stand up for that, say, what are we doing here, people? What are we doing, Tim?
Yeah, I loved it because I found her, and when she was bringing that up, that she would make her comment and then do a little drop down, and and this is the people's money, and she kept putting those little nails in, and she just called it out. What is the budget? Where's this money going for? Who's accounting for it? And you've got to answer to the people where you're spending their money, and you can't do that. You have an obligation. And I was like, yeah, you go, girl. Like, she was bang on, and she stood up there and she did what she said she was going to do. She wasn't going to just throw lofty pitches so that these guys could knock them out of the park. Yeah, I was impressed, and I thought that she called it out. She called a spade, and she was asking the questions that I think we've all talked about 1,000 times, and yeah, I thought it was good.
I thought it was good too.
Mm-hmm.
Does it compete though, Bob, or pardon me, let me go to Josh here for a second. I want to get your opinion of the fact of the panel really, from Lou Elizondo to Nancy Mace and others, they really took their pot shots, Josh, at Arrow.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, one of the things that Nancy said early on was that, they were saying that that Arrow was saying that, none of this stuff can be validated as, NHI craft or ET craft, or that, everything is just, it's something that we just can't explain yet, but there's nothing to it. And, her point was, I think, what you all were echoing before, that, well, then why do we keep putting money into a program that if there's nothing really there? And you're right. I mean, I think that, they all kind of took their shots at Arrow not really producing what I think everybody hoped it would produce when it was established. It really feels like it was created for smoke. Like it's just a smoke screen. And there's nothing really that's ever going to come from Arrow that will be either A, available to the public, or B, that will satisfy, this congressional interest in making sure that we know what's going on with the UAP topic.
Bob, out of all the amazing comments that Nancy Mace made today, just your question on who made the best comment. Was it Nancy Mace, or was it Jared Moskowitz, who basically said, if Fight Club exists, you don't talk about Fight Club, right?
Well, and his logic was, if there's no UAP retrieval program, why are you trying to talk us out of having a hearing? That was his point. So I like that as well as any. I look at it, she had a ton of 50 remarks, but that was Jared Moskowitz's most important contribution.
Rob, let's get your take on that.
Yeah, once again, I loved it. I just felt like they were more relaxed this time around and knew what they wanted to ask. And, I just hope they're doing it. It would appear they're doing good things, or at least doing things behind the scenes, trying to further their knowledge or look in further to other things. So I'm just hopeful. That makes me hopeful that these hearings aren't for nothing. Though I don't know what you get from a group of witnesses like these. I just don't know what, if they hadn't picked these people, or how that all came about. But I can at least tell on their end that they're serious about trying to do something with the information.
We got about 90 seconds left. Josh, let's get your take on that with the Fight Club comment.
Yeah, I mean, I still feel like, kind of the gut reaction is that we're basically watching some sort of a elaborate chess game unfold, and that they're rolling out people that we on the outside look at and think, well, this doesn't really make sense from a disclosure perspective, but it's this move is going to trigger this person to make a response move or whatever. We're just kind of watching this chess game unfold. Hopefully, with the end result being some sort of a grander, let's say, admission that, yes, we're being visited, and yes, we've been retrieving craft for 70 years.
Science Bob, last minute before we go into break here at the top of the hour, your thoughts, just overall.
I want to answer Richard Minnick's question. Do you think the public event watches this stuff when it was at the same time as Biden meeting with Trump in the White House? No.
That's it. So, just one word answer.
Yeah. Nope. There was just there. I don't think it had much of an audience. Maybe all the UFO people will look at it and they'll be happy to see that things were moving forward. But what can I say? Is not going to compete with all the other political news and the falderall, and are the trials going to be canceled? Are Biden and Trump going to fight, or are they going to hug each other in the White House? It just was not going to compete with that.
I want to say one thing before we go to break here. I was surprised pleasantly that Global News up here in Canada, which literally has never covered anything about this topic, on their YouTube channel, they actually ran the hearings live. And when I checked in, there was almost 3,000 people watching their feed on the UFO hearings. Science Bob and friends with Courtney, Tim, Sweet Robbie G, and Josh Rutledge continue right after this. This is Spaced Out Radio with host Dave Scott.
So the other big question is, did Chris Bledsoe make it into the hearing?
Yes. He was in multiple picks, and
Good.
I was talking to him the whole time.
I figured. That's why I asked you if he made it in.
Yeah, he made it in. He was ecstatic. And of course, Ryan was out promoting his dad every possible tweet he could.
I saw that on Facebook.
And then what's his name from News Nation walked down the line, and as he got to the place where he was supposed to stop, turn, look at the camera, and give his piece, Chris Bledsoe was right on his left shoulder. So he was on TV for 30, 40 seconds.
Yeah, good. I'm glad. He deserves to be on News Nation.
I got to tell you, I went to North Carolina to the festival.
I know. I want to hear all about it. I heard
and
you talking
we
about
saw 250 people, saw well over 100 craft in an hour and a half.
And how about after effects? Did you hear of anybody afterwards, like reaching out, having experiences after they went home?
Yes. So I've seen multiple videos where the people claimed they saw stuff after they went home. Some of them crying. I mean,
yeah, I'm sure
it's emotionally impactful.
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah, I was in DC last week for work, for my day job. And when I was coming back on Friday of last week, I just happened to look out my window as coming over Ohio, Indiana area, and saw a UAP out my airplane window, like grabbed my phone really quick and recorded it and everything. And yeah, I mean, it's like you're not even trying to hide anymore. They're just
but we were driving home in October. It was in the early afternoon. The skies were clear blue because we were driest we've ever been in ages. And so it was a clear blue sky, and right across the road in front of us flew a cylindrical UFO. It took me a minute to say, "Whoa, that's not an airplane. That's a UFO." So I reached down to grab my camera, brought my phone up, and it had gone. It took off and was gone in a microsecond.
Well, maybe Dave is going to bring this up, but what did you guys think about the question about, do you think there's more sightings and incursions because we're looking more towards it, or we have better signals intelligence or not? What do you think about that question?
Oh, that was a great question. I'm not sure we got the right answer, because the answer is we're seeing a whole lot more.
I wondered what you thought.
Yeah, they've turned the sensitivity up and the filter cutoff down, and so they're getting more reports. That's in NORAD.
I know. I'm always asking people, like, why don't we hear more from NORAD? Why don't people get the NORAD data? It's like one of the biggest missing pieces from the puzzle, I think. But
and these silver spheres, they're everywhere. All the time.
Mine looked like a teardrop, like a metallic teardrop when I first saw it, and then I was like, what is that? And I'm like, questioning what I was seeing. And then when I decided to start filming it, it actually changed into a cylinder and then like slowly moved away from the plane. So,
ooh, cylinders are rare. I wonder, Josh, if you read through the, the descriptions, the morphology that they talked about, because when I read it, I saw my own experience in there when they talked about the orange orbs coming down, and I had that exact experience. So I don't know if people are reading that stuff, maybe just the UFO nuts, but I saw my own experience reflected in the report, and I was like, well, there it is.
I put up 2 tweets yesterday that had my AI rendering and then a copy off of Redstone of the cylindrical UFO we saw in October. It was the one from Redstone. It was a dead ringer, the whole big long thing with a black tip on the leading edge.
I'm going to submit my case to MUFON, let them do an investigation. So,
Good.
I mean, I've already done my investigation.
You should do it to New Fork because
They're the best.
MUFON is moribund.
Well, I'm a
Everybody says
MUFON
they're
FI,
the
so
best.
I figured
just telling you,
I should drink my own Kool-Aid.
I'm telling you, they're not doing anything.
I didn't think New Fork was doing any investigations.
Josh, you said it was
Well,
on.
MUFON's not tasking field investigators.
Your side was on a plane, Josh.
They tried to have a coup, and McDonald won. I mean, it's rough in MUFON right now.
I don't know. I mean, I'm getting cases left and right in Arizona.
That's good. That's good. That means you've got a good state director.
You got 45 days to pull that the FAA radar data, just so you know, heads up. Like if you want to pull that yourself, FOIA it, you got 45 days for they purge the data, which they don't tell anybody. That's such a short period of time. It's ridiculous. And I know you know why they do that, right? Because they don't
want us looking.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's right. We got about 35 seconds here, guys. Big thank you tonight to Area 53, Joe, Ken, Search and Destroy, Walter, Android, Richard, and Jason for the great super chats. It's a wonderful way to support what we do on this show on a nightly basis. So thank you very, very much. And don't forget, you can shop at our Spaced Out Radio store. Why, Tim?
Because we don't sell ugly swag, people.
Rob, is there ugly swag there?
No ugly swag, nada.
No ugly swag, people. You can wear our stuff out in public and be happy about it. All right, here we go. Here we go with the second hour of Spaced Out Radio tonight. It's all about the UFO hearings. My name is Dave Scott. Thank you very much for taking the time to join us wherever you are on this beautiful planet we call Earth. Hello to everyone listening in on our terrestrial affiliates around North America, digitally on every major podcast network. Our website, spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, read the news wire, check out our swag as well. Follow us on X at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on Patreon in the Space Travelers Club. The Desert Clam has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club. The password is UAP.
Oh, really?
It's a terrible one, I know. I'm blaming Jules for this. UAP is your password. Use it wisely, Space Travelers, as the Clam says the password each and every night right here on Spaced Out Radio. All right, Science Bob and Friends with Dr. Bob McGwier. We are hitting it deep and hard on the UFO hearings in Washington, D.C. We are joined by Science Bob from After Hours, Sweet Robbie G, podcaster Josh Rutledge, also a MUFON in Arizona, Tim James from the UFO Report, and our intrepid researcher, Courtney Marchesani. Science Bob, your thoughts on Lou Elizondo's testimony earlier? You've muted yourself, Bob.
He was nervous, carefully guarding and parsing every word before it came out of his mouth to make sure he didn't cross any lines. He was trying to calculate on the fly how close to any line he could get. And so it made kind of a stilted performance. Didn't feel natural. He was acting naturally. He was very, very careful. And so he told us basically not much new. He told us that he told us in more clear fashion his exact history, where he was hired from, which was he worked for the White House, and that he had been a counterintelligence officer and had done really interesting things. And he has gotten a lot of awards in the intelligence field. He has been highly rewarded. But I just don't think he had that big a role at all, if any, in OSAP. and his role in ATIP was, if anything, unofficial. So it was just, it was interesting. I was glad to see him under oath and him answer the questions, but he was very cautious.
I thought that he was extremely cautious as well, and I expected differently, considering, Tim, that he was, very open over the last few months about Imminent, his book, the role he had, and everything. And do you think maybe, Tim, he was a little bit more cautious because he knew prior to this he was taking a lot of heat for the ULP, the unidentified lighting phenomena?
Yes, I think I agree with Bob, and it seemed very calculated and very, very precise. I guess for lack of a better term, it seemed very sterile. He wasn't bringing anything new. I didn't think, and very just very precise, very, very calculated, and you could see, like Bob said, you could see his wheels turning, and he was trying not to get any further than he had to, or than he should. I was expecting more out of him for that simple fact. With his book out and everything like that, I thought that he'd be a little bit more of a, I guess, troublemaker for that. I guess the way that I'm thinking of it. I didn't see that from him. And yeah, he seemed not nervous, but very, very, very cautious about, and chose his words and his answers very carefully.
Courtney, let's get your take on Elizondo's testimony.
I thought he was very respectful. I thought that he was very much Lou, very much himself. I do think that the pressure, obviously, if you put yourself in the man's shoes, is, all that attention and the book and the criticisms and people looking into the background and searching FOIAs. And so I thought it was interesting. He was very contained, but he was also, I think, representing what he did. He said he managed an SAP on behalf of the White House and the National Security Council. I mean, that doesn't just hold a little bit of weight, it holds a lot of weight in his testimony. So I do think leading with that gives a little bit of gravitas to what he's going to say next. I think that they tried to push him hard. Moskowitz asked him, rapid fire questions about his background, and he was very respectful. I do think that he was very courteous in the sense that, he pressed hard for things like a watchful Congress. He wanted to say, these are the things that we need to be worried about. And, even in his book, and Chris Mellon doing the frontispiece on his book, he's concerned about, a huge national security breakdown and, a post 9/11 war. And those things obviously weigh heavy on his mind. And so I think that also was conveyed in the testimony, and why he was so measured in his response, and why he really, really pushed that this is a threat. And, I thought it was interesting on some of the commentary that he said that he had never heard about some of these other programs, which I thought he would say yes about the hybrid, if it's going to be out there, and I know he's at least had to entertain stories by people who have talked about it. I was surprised he said no. That was my big aha.
There's a couple things that I noticed in regards to his testimony. Number one, he wanted to get into that skiff so badly. I really noticed that, Rob, that it was all about the skiff, And the other thing too, when he was questioned about alien bodies, he refused to say the word bodies. It was biologics. It's like he couldn't get that one out. What did you think, Rob?
Yeah, biologics could mean those. The question they asked later was about the craft being alive, and that could have been what he was hinting towards and wanting to speak to in the skiff. But I just, Elizondo, I wanted him to be the hero of the day. I like Lou, and I just feel like he has had so many years to prepare. He came out in 2017 on national news and told his story. He did 1,000 podcasts rehashing the story. He went and wrote the book, had it reviewed for like a year, 2 years. His story once again. He's told us many times that he's spoken to Congress that he's been at NDC doing this exact same thing, telling the story. So it just was weird to me that he gets here on this day and he can barely form words and he can't really speak to a lot of the things that I felt like he should have been able to speak to. It just didn't feel right. It just didn't feel right for me. And I don't know why. I just don't know why. Maybe it was because, as you pointed out, he wanted to do most of the talking in a skiff. That could be it. But it just didn't feel like Lou. It just didn't feel like Lou. And I thought that he would have been dropped, not necessarily bombshells, but at least been able to articulate, and know where that line is, because he's had to come up to it so many times in different conversations that I felt like the conversation should have flowed a lot better during this hearing.
I thought so too. And I would have liked to have seen more of that. I would love to have seen more flow and the expressive, emotional Elizondo that we have seen over the years, especially over the last 3-4 months on every show that he has been doing, except this one, right? So I found it kind of amazing with that. Josh, were you surprised, though, that it was just repetitive of what he kept on saying in his book? Because I think about 3 or 4 times he brought up the fact that I could only talk about what I am allowed to, and basically what he put in his book.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I'm actually going to disagree with Rob and others on Lou. I mean, I think that they were given 5 minutes, right? Each representative was given 5 minutes to ask a series of questions. I mean, Nancy kind of laid it out in the very beginning that she needed yes, no answers, and I think in a lot of cases for Lou, when he was asked a question, he felt like he needed to give contextual information that he wasn't really allowed time to do. And so I think that's why you kind of get that kind of stuttering approach to his response, because he's like, well, you asked me a question that I need 15 minutes to explain the beginning of before I answer a yes or no, but yet you're asking me to just give you a yes, no answer. And so I think that was what I saw from him, is that it was I'm going to try to answer your question to the best of my ability in a yes, no format, not knowing how much pre-information that these folks had received, right? Because like Tim Burchett from Tennessee has been in the other hearings, but I think all these other folks are relatively new participants. And so not knowing necessarily what all they've really been a part of and what conversations they've been a part of, it could be difficult to answer a yes, no question and provide enough contextual information. As far as the stuff that he did answer, I agree. I mean, it seems like a lot of it is the same kind of regurgitation of what's in his book. But again, I'll go back to what we talked about in the beginning. The fact that he's under oath and he's saying the same information, in my opinion, it gives it a little more gravitas than just being in his book, right? Because now it's being stated under oath, it's part of congressional record, etc. So I mean, I think that when you get Lou on a podcast and he's given 30 minutes to just kind of talk freely and openly about all the things that he's got going on, you get a different kind of Lou. But when you get a Lou that is given 90 seconds to give a 15-minute answer, you get kind of, he gets kind of jumbled up a little bit, thinking, how is he going to deliver this answer in such a short period of time?
I could agree, but I don't know though, because a lot of people were going over their time limits, and that was even brought up a few times. They weren't even paying attention to time limits in some of these cases during the hearing. And Grush, if you compare with Lou Elizondo and what he's bringing to the table, is on a level of a David Grush, and Grush actually articulated everything that he needed to say during the hearing and made an impact with the things that he said. Lou Elizondo just didn't do that. So I don't know if he just fumbled the ball and just was too nervous to kind of get it out. But Yeah, I just think he underperformed. I think he even knows that he could have done it a little bit better if he goes back and looks at the tape.
Yeah, I mean, maybe it's can't remember the person in chat, but I saw it pop up. Maybe he had a bunch of hot dogs the night before, and he just was. He's had a full stomach, and he just wasn't quite himself. I don't know, but
no, he literally had no neck today. Just to add a little bit of humor there, not an insult, just a little bit of humor.
Yeah.
Science Bob, overall, one thing that Elizondo did say that I found great is he was very affirmed in his answer to the question about whether or not these craft are from here, as well as whether or not we are alone. He answered those extremely matter-of-factly. Your thoughts on the fact that he was very, very straightforward that there's something out there more than is from Earth. You're muted, Bob. 1 second.
Okay, so he did get there with these things are not from here, made by people on Earth. So we don't know where they come from, but they're not made by us or our adversaries. That was straightforward and matter of fact. And I think by now almost everyone knows who follows this field at all is that they have removed a fairly significant number of them for the possible human source field. So we got to figure out where they're from. And then he was straightforward in kind of all that kind of thinking, and it's important. And furthermore, and he was under oath, and I saw a positive impact of his having been under oath and talking, and that is the black ball climbed off his back.
Are any of you surprised, Courtney, we'll start with you on this, that it took this long for Lou Elizondo to finally testify?
Yes. And I think the craziest, most maddening thing of all is that because it's taken so long, when he says those words, we're not alone, right? In this universe, it doesn't have this huge impact that it should by hearing it. And so this huge lag time and all this buildup and then all this obfuscation by our own government has led to that kind of falling on deaf ears. And that's the biggest thing to me in hearing it, is that we should all be more in awe of the fact that that's what he's saying, that those are the things that are really coming out of his mouth in a hearing, but we're more hung up on the secrecy, the conspiracy, the money that's being spent, where, the scientific part of this, the huge part of the physics that could be part of all of this and unlocking, truths to the universe, it just seems to be getting sidelined. So that's the thing that's the most mind-boggling to me of all.
How about you, Tim?
Yeah, I think Courtney nailed it. I'm looking at it the same way. I'm thinking that basically, yeah, we've got sidetracked, and I think that him explaining that, and him, a matter of fact, yep, no, there's other non-human or other living beings and stuff out there. Yeah, we're jaded, I guess, or we're focused in another direction, because that should be one of those things that makes people go, holy cow, and we're not seeing that. So yeah, a little different that way.
Josh, your take.
Same. I mean, I was really surprised when Grush testified that Lou wasn't right next to him. I mean, that would have seemed like the best. Grush makes a statement. They asked Lou the same question. Yep, that's exactly right. It would have just solidified things right then and there. If they would have just, last year been on the same panel together. The other thing that I just really don't quite understand with all of this is, the whole statement around, we're not alone. Lou, as a part of promoting his book, have been on a lot of mainstream programs. He was on Comedy Central's the whatever news thing they do, and interviewed there, a bunch of local TV stations, etc. And he continues to say that same line and statement. We're not alone. It seems like there's a missed opportunity here for somebody to do more of a public campaign for, look, the government signed off on this book, and this book says we're not alone. Therefore, the government is unofficially saying we're not alone. Like, why is that not a billboard in various cities around the country? Why is no one really jumping on the public knowledge aspect of this instead of just relying on people who happen to watch the daytime news coverage that talks about the hearing?
The issue is the Doppler approval contains the caveat. This is not endorsed by the United States government. We just said he could say it.
Yeah, it's got the disclaimer, but it's still, Lou even talked about it today, that he went through that process. It took over a year.
Ridiculous.
In his book, he talks about how many revisions it had to go through before it was approved for publish. The fact that it was approved for publish, though, but the content that it contains, in my opinion, is the unofficial. I understand the disclaimer and all of that, but it's an unofficial.
I'm just going to add this in. I know we're going to go to the other folks on the panel, but I also think we heard from many of the people, including Grossman, that, trust in the government is at an all-time low. And so you hear all this about controlled narrative, controlled disclosure, and that's all, being sanctioned potentially by the government. So that's another aspect to this that people don't trust and they don't believe. And so there's another added level of psychology there that I think that, comes to play. Not everybody trusts Lou, so there's that as well.
Well, and that's why I brought up the statement a little bit earlier regarding the idea of how much impact did this entire ULP incident actually come into play here. I'm sure he was very nervous about this, Rob, because he had been the poster boy. Yes, he had taken a lot of criticism, but he had been the poster boy of ufology, the top tier, the number one guy for so long. And then all of a sudden, it all came to a crashing halt with the unidentified lighting phenomena picture.
In this space and on totally opposite side of this conversation, and it's they say things about Lou or have said things in the past, and I look at it and I'm like, I don't really see all of that. But then I saw the ULP incident, and I just couldn't fathom how someone who is the director, the head of ATIP, who has seen supposedly all these photos and images and videos come across his desk, how you could not question the images that you were showing, which to me, and I've had my own sighting, but it was obviously questionable and something that maybe a few other opinions should have been gathered before you went in and put it out. And he said he had it for 2 years, which was so weird. And so it didn't sit right with me on how a mistake like that could be made by a person like Lou in his position. And then I said, okay, here's what we'll do. We'll wait and see, because at the time they weren't saying who was going to be at this hearing. They were keeping it secret. And I was like, let's wait to the hearing and see, maybe if these things correlate or if they are some way related. And so happened Lou's at the hearing, and he has an underwhelming performance. And I'm just like, okay, now I have to sit and think about all this. Like, what is really going on here? Because people have accused Lou of really doing this whole misinformation campaign, and then you have an obvious fake photo that you put out a week before you're going to be testifying in the hearing, and then you come to the hearing and you're not really delivering the Lou experience the way that you've always done. So what's going on here? That's kind of where I'm at with it right now, and I guess time will tell where this goes. So we'll see.
Photographic analysis is not Lou's forte, and after the hearing today, Senator Mike Rounds grabbed Lou, put him in front of his door, and handed him this giant placard poster thing with congratulating Lou for all the work he had done on behalf of the American people on UAP. Senator Round made his opinion known.
All right, panel, I'm going to get you to hold on right there because we're already halfway through this special event on Science Bob and Friends with Dr. Bob McGwier. Our panel of Courtney Marchesani, Tim James, Josh Rutledge, and Sweet Robbie G continues on Spaced Out Radio right after this.
You're listening to Spaced Out Radio with your host, Dave Scott.
All right, we're clear.
Did you all happen to watch the Russ Coulthart after hearing analysis? No.
No, I haven't watched.
Yeah.
He said that he's pretty sure he knows who the source is for the report, based on it being approved by the Department of State. So.
What do you think about the document? Because there's typos in it. It looks like it was rushed. There's no formal stamp or anything on it. I mean, it just like it's kind of a little bit haphazard. What's your opinion on it?
Russ said, and I tend to agree with his assessment, but Russ says that it's not an official document. It's basically the source's interpretation of what he knows written up in a report type format, but it's not an official government document. And based on, those things that you highlighted, that's what I would interpret it as well. It's basically a data dump, if you will, a mind dump from a source that got kind of written up in a report type format.
I don't know.
The issue is it should have had classification markings on it per paragraph, or it's a violation of federal law. Whoever did it is really pushing the envelope.
Yeah. I mean, I think that document's going to get called into question. And I think that Schellenberger might get bit because of it. And he also said a bunch of things in the 214-page report. I talked to Grant about it just through email that are not factual. So I think some of those things are going to come up as well. They're just not, they're just taken out of context. They're wrong. I'm going to send it to you guys after so you can see what Grant said. He was trying to clear up the record, on what was submitted to Congress, and it wasn't right. So if those things start to add up, I think, like I said, that could bite him. Just my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly, I think, suspect. Well, I don't know. It's, Schellenberger says that he vetted, right, the source, that the source is who they say they are, and that some of the information that was given in the documentation he was able to vet through other cross, I guess, representation. So, but I can certainly see where the content of at least the 12-page document is going to be enough that if it elicits additional investigation, somebody, he's going to have to somehow link his source with somebody, right? Because otherwise it becomes it's hearsay, and there's no way to really officially, investigate or back it up.
It's a problem with sources, man. It's a problem with sources.
All right. Tim, you look so interested.
Totally.
Hey, bud.
Hey, bud. How's it going?
Good. How you doing?
Right
I
on.
just saw you shake your head. What was that about? Are you going to tell us? I thought I saw you shake your head like, no.
Oh, no, I twitch all over the place. I'm one.
Okay. I was like, something is not agreeable.
No. And plus, I'm out of all 6 on the panel, I'm the most newest to this, so I'm kind of absorbing, and I have opinion, but it's better to keep my mouth shut and not look like a
No, it's better to throw it down. Yeah, listen to Bob. It's better to throw it down, man. Take a risk.
Yeah, do it.
Throw down, give a rip, have fun.
All right.
Mace says, "Come on, bro." I couldn't believe she said that to
I
Ogles,
love
who
it.
was coming in. She was like, "I saved a seat for you, bro." I felt like it was like slapping ass in the football, room where they're like, "Hey, bro, let me slap your ass." I was like, "There's some part of this is very informal and very unusual, but whatever."
Hey, Bob, would you like to
she's
answer
getting it
Joe's
done.
question?
Joe Monk has aliens.
How many times has Science Bob fallen asleep during an alien invasion? That is awesome. Bob got into a habit there. We used to do round tables every month, and Bob got into a habit there for a while.
Falling asleep during them.
All of a sudden, you'd see him. He'd be like this, and he'd be like this. Got up snoring.
Oh my
Once-
God. Some of the round tables that you guys used to do way back with Grant were some of the best round tables ever.
The ones he's talking about where William and Chris bored the crap out of me so I would go to sleep.
All right. Big thank you tonight to Area 53, Joe, Ken, Search and Destroy, Walter, Android, Richard, Jason with a hat trick, Latchkey, Joe K, Jobless, and Blue Cruise. Thank you for the love. Don't forget, you can shop at our Spaced Out Radio store. Why, sweet Robbie G?
Because we don't have ugly swag.
That's right. No ugly swag at our Spaced Out Radio store. So get in there and go shopping while you're listening to this. And yeah, we'd appreciate it too. Give us a thumbs up as well. Here we go. Here comes the second half of Spaced Out Radio tonight. My name is Dave Scott. We really do appreciate earning your listening ears wherever you are on this beautiful planet we call Earth. We're going to continue with the UFO Roundtable tonight on Science Bob and Friends with Dr. Bob McGwier momentarily. But first, we want to remind you that if you've missed portions of this show or others, you can always check out our free archives by going to youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do old Davey the favor, hit that subscribe button. Our website, spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, read the Newswire, check out our swag as well. Follow us on X at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on Patreon in the Space Travelers Club. Dr. Bob McGwier, known as Science Bob, he comes in here each and every month to break down the who, what, where, when, why, and how of all things paranormal and supernatural. Science Bob, it's the UFO hearing special. And I'd like to, before we get on to Matthew Schellenberg, Bob, I'd like you to kind of just give an overall observation of what you thought of the hearings, what you think of the panel. What do you want to ask?
Oh, well, that's a good question. Look, overall, it was entertaining for 2 hours, and it covered stuff under oath. So we got to check people under oath for what they've been saying. And so that part of it was informative. And it's good that Lou finally got his DOPSR approval so he could talk about stuff in front of Congress. It's good to hear Tim Gallaudet give a little more color to his Navy stories. Schellenberger is way outside of his field and did a creditable job given he was so far way outside of his field. It's clearly he had help by someone writing that document up. Then the first three I named were cheated by having to give 1/4 of the time to the one that shouldn't have been there. So that's pretty much my view of the thing. So I would ask the same of each of the panelists, your highlight, starting with Courtney.
I liked hearing more about the USOs, the Omaha incident, the email that the Fleet Force commander sent out and then, pulled back from, emails. It was very good to hear Tim Gallaudet's experience of that and basically saying it was slippage. And then he described slippage. He talked about how sometimes these things go out and they go down to another level that is not appropriate. And so they have to go in and kind of scrub or scrape the emails. And then it was never talked about. There was like a code of silence in that whole command. And so I thought that was excellent testimony. Great context for the fact of what happens with these other training exercises and that he was part of this one. So I thought that was good. I also thought that it was good that he talked about the group that he works with and other witnesses, and they feel they can trust him to share their stories, and that there's more ongoing and that there's going to be more in the future. All those things were really great. I really felt like, and I've said this, in the chat and also in the panel, but I think Michael Schellenberger's is the weakest. And I know a lot of people say that that's not the case, because Immaculate Constellation is this new, unacknowledged sap that, we've never heard of, and that this is a groundbreaking thing. But I think because of the way it was delivered into the hearing today, it makes it weak. Just because the document is a personal potential write-up, it isn't, any kind of classified document coming from any kind of chain of custody or anything. So I think that was the part that I felt let down about the most in the hearing. And then I think I was saying this in one of the breaks, is that the thing that's really kind of nice about, hearing the morphology of all these different craft and the shape of them and the way they appear and the way they show up in the military exercises or wherever, a lot of people that read this follow up on it. And I know there are a lot of new listeners who are going to tune in and read all this stuff. They're going to see potentially their own experiences in the testimony. And so I think that that's another great thing that I took away from the hearing too, that people will be validated, that it's real, and that they'll see it in the testimony. So those were my big takeaways.
Tim.
Lay it down. I think for me, because straight up, this was the first time that I actually got to sit and watch this all happen. And I mean, I've gone back on the past hearings and stuff and seen them on YouTube's and different platforms and bits and pieces. But I think that for me, the whole thing was intriguing to me, because it was the dynamic, the way that things occurred, the way the questions happened, the way that they were answered, just ciphering through it and putting, I guess, the puzzle together for me was exciting. It was almost like, relating to it, it was almost like going to your very first rock concert as a kid. You're looking at the lights, you're listening to the music, you're doing all that stuff. And that's what I was really interested in. I wanted to see how this worked. I wanted to see if this was going to be scripted reality or if this was going to be the real deal, and were there going to be answers that I was going to go, holy cow, that's awesome. Yeah, I just found the whole thing quite intriguing. And like I say, being somewhat new to this, I really enjoyed it. And yeah, and I drew my own judgments. Like you said, wasn't overly impressed with Lou, was impressed with some of the statements, was impressed with some of the questions that were asked. But yeah, I don't have any singular takeaway. I think I just took it all in, and yeah, it was good. It was good. I liked it.
Okay, but before I forget about it, Courtney, recall the statement that Nancy Mace made at the very end of the hearing. You have 5 days to help Michael Schellenberger out. And everybody else who's listening, 5 days, Schellenberger can amend his testimony. And we should help him do that so they get a good record. Josh, what'd you like?
Yeah, I mean, I think that for me, it was not necessarily the answers to the questions, the direct answers, let's say, was it was the things like the Admiral talking about just before coming into the hearing, having Chris Mellon talk to him about some footage that was available that had not been, kind of made public yet. Talking about the button, the disc shape that was seen when kind of pressed around what type of UAP, can you describe it? He gave that detail. Hearing about this supposed, high res images, not the, the words that were used, not the fuzzy things that we've been seeing, but like high res images and videos of UAP that are in some database somewhere that are available if people know how to look and ask for them. The thing too that I think for me, and this is what I think came out of the Grush hearing as well, is that we got a lot of information that should inform future FOIA requests, right? Even if this report from Schellenberger is not verified or validated, if nothing else, if just some of the content that's in it leads to FOIA requests where we do get some more validated information, then, I think that, just having it presented here today will be beneficial. But that's for me, the parts that I think I pulled out of this is the fact that there is more that we haven't been able to get our hands on yet. And maybe that will inform, the Black Vault folks to go off and do some additional FOIA requests and get access to some of this content that we now know is available.
I guarantee you, John had an automated transcript within half an hour writing up the FOIA request.
Yeah.
Mr. Robbie G, what's up?
Science Bob, I got to tell you what I loved. The one thing that I really, really loved and I think should be just highlighted was the fact that the Congress themselves were more educated. They came into this asking the right questions without, they've learned so much up to this point. So that just encourages me that they have enough knowledge to go on their own and kind of search these things out without having to talk to too many more people. So I think that's a real positive and a great takeaway from this here. And I think the people in those projects see that they're asking those right questions, and they know that this question, the answer to this question leads to this one, which leads to their front door at some point here. So I think they're going to be getting scared behind the scenes. I'm just glad that Congress has a wrap on this now. And now I would love for them to, I think I said this earlier, bring in, I think their next panel should be, let's say 60% high-level experiencers. Let's bring in the aerial school kids, and then let's bring in a couple of military guys as well, so we can have a balance there. And I think that should be the next stage of where these hearings should go.
All right, Dave, and what did you hear about the new documentary that has Lou and 50 other interesting people in it, including some firsthand whistleblowers?
Well, we're going to hear what comes out. I mean, it's going to be interesting to see the new names. We know Jason Sands, we know Elizondo, we know David Grush. We're all waiting to hear who these new players are going to be. And correct me if I'm wrong, Bob, but I think you're talking about James Fox's new documentary that's coming out.
I am not. It was a name I had never heard of before today.
Were you talking about Dan Farah? Michael Schellenberger dropped that in the hearing.
I think that might be the name, but it was
that's it.
New, and they were all new names on the witness list.
Well, it's interesting to see how that plays out. And I apologize. As many of you know, I work a daytime job, so I was kind of in and out at certain points. So I think I was out on that point. So I'm not going to hide the fact to give you an answer that I didn't hear it.
You did good, but it's just interesting. What I see is the amount of stuff is coming at us like a tidal wave at last.
Right.
So it's going to swamp the people trying to keep a secret.
I would like to answer your question that you answered the other panelists, though, Bob. My big take out of this, I'm going to agree with Rob, where I think that it was absolutely wonderful on the great hardcore questions. There was no dancing around the subjects this time. There was no pussyfooting around like when we saw others talk to Sean Kirkpatrick or others regarding this. I thought it was great. I was on a couple of things kind of made my mind twitch. Number one, I didn't at least hear the word or the term UFO once. Everything was hardcore UAP. And we've seen the term UFO come up in every other hearing except this one. At least for me, I didn't hear anything UFO because I'm a UFO guy. I'm not a UAP guy. So if I hear UFO come up, I'm like, yep, there we go. Now we can talk about actual alien objects instead of man-made objects. So that one really got to me. The other one was I was really, really smiling because everybody who knows me in the UFO world knows I'm a big woo guy. I love the woo. I love the stories. I love people's experiences. That's what we try and bring on this show. on a nightly basis. And when Anna Paulina Luna was kind of going down, or was it Bobert? I think it was Luna, was going down that rabbit hole about different types of things, from hybridization to ships being alive, and all of this kind of stuff about experiencers. I really thought, holy cow, we might be starting to take this to the next level. Now, I just want to preface this as well. Anybody who thought that we were actually going to get huge evidence, huge information, photos, videos, whatever, give your head a shake. And I mean that politely. We knew that wasn't going to happen. We are still, if you put it in the span of a lifetime, we're still crawling here. We haven't even started walking yet. Okay, as a toddler. That's how infant this subject is. And I think we need to remember that going in. And look, I'm Mr. Negative when it comes to these. I can't stand the hearings because we get into all the biologics, non-biologics, non-human intelligence, NHI, UAP, DOPSers, SCIFs, any kind of acronym you could find, they are thrown around like a ball on a roulette wheel. But this one, for just the adamancy and the professionalism of the questions, really finally gave me a little bit of hope, Bob.
I want to back you up on that, and I want to make one more comment. How many times did you see a Congress critter reach back hoping for help from their staffer? Zero. They had no staffer input. They were completely prepared.
Now,
And how about?
Go ahead. No, go ahead, Courtney.
I thought it was impressive that Higgins, while slow, obviously a very slow processor, and he was reading, this report. He was talking about the biological effects. That got entered in. He talked about the biological effects. He talked about what happens to people after they have these sightings or these interactions or encounters. And he at least brought that in. And I thought that was very good of him, that he talked about experiencers in that way.
I agree.
Report.
One of the things, though, that I will say that was disappointing again, and I know why they did it. Okay. And there was a tweet out there that I actually responded on the SOR account. And it was about the idea that once again, they were focusing this on strictly military and nuclear sites. There was no abbreviation on that whatsoever. There was nothing that they were doing that was going to be, that this is happening over the plains of Wyoming or the mountains of Washington State, or the oceans of Florida. They weren't doing that. They tried to keep it so pro-military about the adversary. And I realize why they're doing it, but I don't have to agree with it. And I didn't agree with that. Your thoughts, Bob?
They are not covering the real impact on airline pilots. We're seeing all sorts of airline pilots taking photos or videos out of their cockpit. I mean, that's just not cool. And some of these are near misses.
Yeah,
that's really bad. And then you've got multiple videos showing weird things happening to people on boats from USOs. They need to figure out how to involve the citizen witnesses.
Well, Andy Ogles put this out. He said, witnesses confirmed today that Americans should know what is happening in the skies. UAPs are targeting sensitive sites, many of which contain critical national defense technology. I responded to that by saying, you do realize this is happening all over the USA and the world. It's not just over sensitive sites. Expand your horizons on the topic. So a little bit of a pot shot there. But on the flip side, we have to take, if we're taking this conversation to a different level, do we not, if we think about it for a moment, do we not have to take it to a level that this is happening everywhere?
Well, so again, we need a collection of sensors. so that it's not just crappy handheld video. We get other things being recorded, and we need a collection of citizen scientists, engineers, amateurs, whatever, that are collecting data that we can all use to tell the people, hey, you're wrong. It's not something, it's a balloon. Here, I can prove it's not a balloon because I've got this data over here. We need more of that, and we need it done in an unrestricted manner by people who have gear themselves. I mean, I have a house full of gear. I have a Madar, I have a Mupas, I have this and that and the other, cameras automated, but I'm not everybody. We need to figure out ways to get everybody able to do this so we do not rely on government. Because they're not going to give us, they're super sensitive, super high tech, super perfect, super resolution, best effort.
Very true. Very true. With 4 minutes to go here before we have to go to break at the top of the hour, sweet Robbie G, overall, what caught your attention about, the fact that they didn't mention UFO? It was all UAP. I know you're a UAP guy. You have UAP underwear and everything.
Well,
UAP
here's the thing. To be fair, UFOs, unidentified flying object, I understand the nostalgic feeling and what it represents, but these objects aren't flying. So UAP is fine to me because it definitely more describes what the characteristics of what these things are doing, being fair. So, but with that being said, I did want to go back to the whole idea that something big was going to come out of this hearing. I just want to point this out because Jeremy Corbell, okay, was all over national media, all over doing these interviews leading up to the hearing. And I'm paraphrasing, but he was like, oh, November 13th, the world's going to be different. It's going to be this big, impactful thing. So he was kind of selling this like he knew, because at the time, no names were mentioned. So we didn't know who was testifying. We didn't know what it was going to be about. But he was out there on the media circuit just pumping this thing up like the world changes on November 13th. And it just didn't live up to that, which I think adds to kind of some of the disappointment of the turnout. And I know that's probably that way for me, because he sold this as being an event where this different thing was going to happen at this hearing, something that was just going to blow the lid off of disclosure. And we got to stop doing that, right? We got to, if unless he knew something different, and plans change leading up to this, you got to stop doing that, right? Just don't do that, because I don't think it helps the conversation, and it kind of sets everybody up to have high expectations and then have this huge letdown when really there were a few good things that came out of the hearing. So I just wanted to go ahead and say that, because Corbell single-handedly did that, and a lot of people felt that way because of that.
I think that's
that, and Matt Ford issued idle threats that never came true. They named some names, but it was just not that big a deal. We got to stop hyping what we're doing.
Bob, if I can just interject here, and Josh, maybe you want to cover this as you're a podcaster as well. We only got about 90 seconds, so I want to hit this quick. We see a lot of these guys pulling the Jake Paul version of clickbait for numbers, for subscribers, for everything. And I think Jeremy Corbell, with 2 million subscribers, he is clickbait central. Not an insult to him, but he knows how to market. And Matt Ford is doing the exact same thing on the pro UFO front, and the pro Elizondo front, and pro government front on everything. And that's not, once again, an insult to these people. It's just a thought of observation. Josh, we got about 45 seconds.
Yeah, I would agree. But I mean, I also think that that's just kind of the way that marketing has to be these days. I mean, it's unfortunate, but I mean, you have to have, you talk about YouTube, the thumbnail and the title is everything, in that environment. And so, I mean, I think that, just like we've talked about, I think before, around, the 7-second, attention span of most people when it comes to social media these days, your elevator speech is gone. Now it's like a elevator one-liner, right? What are you going to use to get people to look at and watch your content? So, I mean, yes, I agree it's clickbaity, but I also think that that's just the world we live in these days.
Oh, very much so. Panel, we got for another hour. We're going to continue this subject on Spaced Out Radio, the UFO hearings. That's the hot topic du jour. And we're going to continue it on Spaced Out Radio, Science Bob and Friends. We'll be right back right after this.
You're listening to Spaced Out Radio with your host, Dave Scott.
All right. Thank you, guys. Bob, I know you're going to get going.
Yep, I've got to drive down to D.C. for breakfast in the morning.
All right. And Tim's going to be here. Sweet Robbie G, are you sticking around?
I'm here, buddy, old pal.
All right. Courtney, we're going to go another hour. If you want to stick around, it's really up to you.
Okay, I'll hang. I'll just take a break and then come back. How much time do we have?
We got 6 minutes.
Okay.
Good night, Science Bob. Josh, do you want to stick around, or do you want to?
I'll hang around. I'll hang around.
All right. We're just going to put you all in the back room here for a little bit, and we'll be right back in a couple of minutes, guys. Stretch my legs. Nice. All right, I am back. Bring Josh back in. There's Sweets. There's Courtney. All right, we got about just under 2 minutes here. Oh. We're going to get to some audience questions here as well.
Cool.
So what do y'all think about Hal Puthoff being maybe the author of that document?
He's not the one that came to my mind, but I think that's maybe a good guess. When I was reading it, I was thinking maybe it was Grush, but that was just a thought I had. Other people had the same thought I heard on different chats. So yeah, it's somebody who doesn't want to be known.
Well, so I know I've heard that Hal's working on a book. And so it's very possible that it's like an advanced copy and they pulled sections out of it for early distribution.
I don't think we're gonna hear too much from him. I think we would have. He's the one that said that he did the, White House survey, and they said back in 2004 that there would be no disclosure. And, Grush brought that up in the first hearing that, it was only going to be a government controlled disclosure. And, to some degree, I think that's what we're seeing.
Okay, guys, hold on 1 second here. We got 20 seconds. Thank you, Human Carl, Richard ×3, Jason with 4, Search ×2, Blue Cruise, Jobless, Joe K, Latchkey, Android, Walter, Ken, Joe, and Area 53 for the great super chats. We love it. And here we go, everybody. Here we go with the third and final hour of Spaced Out Radio tonight. My name is Dave Scott. We always love bringing you the weird stuff each and every night on this show. We're going to continue with the UFO hearings. Hello to everyone listening in on our terrestrial affiliates around North America, digitally on every major podcast network. Our website, spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, read the news wire, check out our swag as well. Follow us on X at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on Patreon in the Space Travelers Club. The Desert Clam is set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club. My favorite term ever, UAP. UAP is your password. Use it wisely, Space Travelers, as the Clam sets the password each and every night right here on Spaced Out Radio. We've lost Science Bob, but we're going to continue with the panel. Sweet Robbie G from After Hours, our UFO reporter, Tim James, one of the top researchers in the UFO world, Courtney Marchesani, and podcaster Josh Rutledge are still with us till the top of the hour as we continue on with this. Before we get to some audience questions, I want to ask you guys about NHI, non-human intelligence. When David Grush was testifying, we heard a lot about biologics. We heard a lot about non-human intelligence, the fact that we are in possession, we being the U.S. government, are in possession of NHI. This is where the term really, really seemed to take off. Josh, I want to start with you on this one. Were you surprised there wasn't a lot of talk regarding NHI, aliens?
Yeah, I mean, very, very much so, because, like you said, it was such a big talking point, I think, in the first session last year with Grush. We got a few little mentions of biologics, like from Lou, I think. And like, I think it was maybe somebody else, maybe Science Bob, maybe referenced that maybe that was in relationship to the ship being alive. But yeah, I mean, I fully expected to have more questions around, not just crash retrieval, but, NHI that may have come from crash retrieval or whatever the case may be. But yeah, it almost seemed like a topic that was purposefully avoided.
Courtney, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, I thought it was conspicuous by its absence. I also thought it was interesting that the one question that came up about Grush's testimony was about interdimensionals and weighing in on that. And, Lou just basically said that's not my area of expertise. And so, passed on it. But I thought that that was interesting that it came up as a follow-up from the first hearing, but no one commented on it and went into it. Whereas David Grush actually went into the physics around it, talked about interdimensionals, what that means, talked about the science. And so that part of it in the first hearing was more rich and developed, and the theories around it. And that there's not just one theory. There was a comment towards the end, by the NASA rep who said that I think we're all going to be very surprised about what NHI really is, and he was alluding to AI and other types of intelligence and lumping that in with NHI. I think that's a little dangerous. If you're not an expert, maybe stick to, what your narrow focus is there. And he was kind of hearkening back, I think, to what Jacques Vallée has talked about in Passport to Magonia and other books, where he says, I think we're going to be very surprised about what these extraterrestrials are, but nobody really weighed in on it and went into those subtle nuances of NHI at all, really. So yeah, I thought it was conspicuous.
How about for you, Rob?
Well, I do recall them bringing up the talking about briefly the craft being alive, and I'm just, it just resonated with me because the sighting I had, the objects were metallic for sure, seen them with my eyes, but they seemed alive. And you hear that a lot with people's sightings. So, and I think that's kind of where they are blurring the line between biologics, recovered bodies, and then, because I think maybe some of these things are alive. I did a show on my channel about that. Like, what if some of these things we're seeing in the sky? What if a minority of what we're seeing in the sky are actually nuts and bolts craft with beings inside of them? And what if the rest of the things we're seeing are just entities that are alive themselves, like the plasma that they talk about? They could be a life form of its own in the upper atmosphere. So I think maybe when it comes out, if it were to come out from them, that they would probably, it would have to be likely something along those lines. Like, there's other things that we think of than just the conventional alien in a craft that we have going on here.
Tim?
Yeah, I think that we'll call it naive, I guess, on my part. I was really hoping that that there'd be more discussion about that as well. And I mean, obviously, like with Dave, and I'm sure like everybody else, the day job, I had to keep jumping in and out and in and out. So when I went back and I was trying to catch up on stuff, yeah, I was surprised that there wasn't anything, or not, shouldn't say anything, but like barely anything on NHI. And I started lurking around and, through comments and people that have been watching and stuff. And I was quite surprised that everybody was like, yeah, there were a lot of people, I think, were expecting a little more substance in that side of the topic. And yeah, and everybody seemed a little bit disappointed. Well, a lot of people that I was looking at seemed disappointed in it. And yeah, I would kind of, for me, I would have hoped there would have been a little more of that as well. But, naive, I guess.
Hey, we're all naive when it comes to this topic.
Yeah, true, right?
I just have one follow-up. Can I just add an add-on to what Rob
Please do.
said? Just a little point. One of the things I thought would have been interesting, but it didn't happen, is for them to talk about plasma and advanced plasma and plasma with orbs, which, several whistleblowers have talked about our own advanced technology and plasma technology and orbs. And then the other side of that, where other whistleblowers are saying that, yes, we have plasma, it's advanced, we do have orbs, but then there's this other side of it, of plasma, that's NHI. That would have been an interesting thing for them to bring up, to talk about the advanced weaponry, to talk about our own tech, to talk about the subtle differences, and that there is an NHI presence that uses plasma. But once again, like, it just seemed like that depth, that really deep bench was missing today on some of those, topics that would have been fascinating for the American public to hear about, and what money we spend on plasma orbs and that kind of weaponry.
Mm-hmm.
I like that. Let's go to some audience questions here because they've been waiting long enough. We're going to start off with Paramarv here. It seems being called to testify in front of Congress would release you from your NDA with the government since they are the ones asking you the questions. Is that not the case? Courtney, I'll get you to take that one.
Okay, this has come up today. A bunch of people weighing in on the whole NDA process. Now, I've heard from several whistleblowers they were cleared from their 30-year NDAs so that they could testify to the Senate Select Intelligence Committee, and others, they said that they were waived so that they could testify. Then I've also heard, you heard from Lou's lawyer, just last week, I think it was, where he was talking about whistleblowers and weighing in on this, saying who's told them that they can't testify, right? Who's told them that they don't have access to speak with somebody in the Gang of Eight or Congress, right? So then there's that opinion. And then there's the other opinion from Richard Doty, who weighed in on Lou's lawyer last week. It said there's, Title 10 and Title 50 clearance that you cannot talk about SAPs. So I think it's interesting because there's all these different opinions about people being able to testify and the NDA process. And I've heard everything. I've heard all those three arguments. So that's my 2 cents.
All right. Josh, I want to get your opinion on that.
Yeah, I mean, I think we actually heard a little bit from Moskowitz, right, when we got to his questioning and he was talking to Lou about, Lou's document that he had to sign about not being able to talk about crash retrieval. He kind of pressed a little bit about, who made you sign that document and who was in the room and, so on and so forth. So, I mean, I think that I can certainly understand where the government would want to have things in place to protect potentially, like they pointed out in the hearing, topics that would potentially show our weaknesses in areas of identification or tracking or whatever the case may be. And so I think that, being able to effectively navigate those different types of NDAs or other documentation that, people may have signed for what they can and cannot disclose is important. I also know that the government, does not do anything primarily on a rank-based system, right? It's all who needs to know, and then they have to get sponsored by various people in order to kind of go through the security process, and then so you could have an admiral that doesn't need to know about an SAP, and so therefore is never read into it. Just because they're an admiral doesn't mean they just automatically get access. And so, members of Congress, being that, by nature, their position can be temporary, I can certainly see wanting to control the flow of information to people who are not potentially lifelong government officials.
I can see that too. Rob, let's get your take on that.
Well, I've heard that NDAs don't apply if it's in commission of a crime, right? So, and I consider all this a crime against humanity. So, I think it's open. I think it's open season. And at the end of the day, I think people that are going to end up challenging these NDAs or kind of coming up against that. I think they just have to realize that society is going to be a different thing once disclosure hits. I mean, just the whole reality of what we're doing and where we're going and what rules are in place, I think will be challenged once disclosure comes. So I just, I encourage someone out there that would be the next whistleblower to step forward to consider breaking your NDA. Consider sitting in front of Congress and just telling the whole story live on TV and just see where the cards fall. Because if it isn't, something that is literally going against national security, then you should be okay. And I think the people will stand behind you. But I think where the twist is, I think the government considers disclosure a risk to national security, period. And so I think that's like the engulfing umbrella that just says not just, the data or the radar or the sensors are threat to national security releasing that information, but just the presence of extraterrestrials, period, because then the nation is at risk of whatever comes from society collapsing. And that's just, how I feel about that.
Rob, I think you hit the nail on the head there, that I would love to see that too. But I think the hard part for a lot of these people, if they're going to whistleblow, is the potential for life-altering course. I mean, that's a scary thing when you're looking at jail time, or you're looking at ruining your pension, or
Yeah.
how do you pay your mortgage? How do you make your car payments? Because I think a lot of times we forget that these are people too, and never mind their position. It's kind of like athletes. If you got your favorite baseball team and you want to trade for a certain player, it's easy to put that name on paper and say, man, that player would look good in my lineup. But we don't understand the no trade clauses, or this person may not want to leave that town because of their children being in school and moving for however long. I mean, that's a big trouble for a lot of these guys, is they have real world problems. They pay mortgages and electrical bills and internet and cell phone. And to throw their entire career away
sounds crazy, right? It sounds crazy, but you look historically in the history of humanity, there's been examples of it over time, and it's just those people who are willing to become the legends and become, that the person that did it. I just think in a situation like this, I think it'd be kind of hard to kind of stick somebody into jail once they've released information regarding the extraterrestrial presence. I just don't see how society stays stable enough for them to enact the repercussions of breaking an NDA. I just don't see it. So thinking that way, there's a chance that okay, I can break this and then still come out okay on the other side of this and not necessarily be thrown in jail. Now, if you break an NDA on some random stuff that you're really not supposed to be talking about, you're going to jail and you probably won't get out. But when we're talking about something that's humanity changing, world changing event as the moment we're in right now, breaking the NDA for this, I think is one, worth it. And then two, I just don't see them enforcing the NDA on that. I just don't see it. No one's tried to break it. So somebody has to do it. That's the only way these congressional things are going to really move any needles. Is going to be slow drip for the rest of time. If we just keep doing these hearings like this, it's going to be in a skiff. It's going to be nothing more they can really say. And we're all going to get old and die, and they're still going to be doing the same thing. So someone has to be the one to do it. I don't know who it is. I would do it if I were in there. I'd take it on the chin for humanity. And hopefully somebody else that's a human, has compassion, thinks about their grandchildren, their descendants, says, you know what, I'm going to do it for them. And then just does it. Maybe it'll happen, maybe it won't.
Thinking about it was Gold, I think, that said it in the hearing, Galileo talking about, the earth revolves around the sun instead of the common day thinking that it was the other way around. He spent the rest of his life in prison. So what we're talking about here coming forward with this stuff is a paradigm shifting topic, right? It is on the same level as what Galileo did in the 1600s. So it's not, I don't think, just a matter of a person potentially losing their livelihood or going to jail, but there's also the aspect of like, we as humans do really dumb things sometimes because of the level of change that we're not quite ready to make. And so I would, think about the people who might get their lives threatened, their family lives threatened, because it forces other people to have to process what this change in reality means. And I know that on the one hand, we could say that maybe at the At the macro level, maybe we are ready to know. But at the micro level, are we? Or do we have would we have groups that would rail against this news and potentially turn to violence against the person who broke the news? And so I think all of that has to be taken into consideration.
I hear you, but people are being abducted every day. People are at risk, and so if the word doesn't get out there globally there's the opportunity, there's the potential possibility that you or any of your loved ones can be pulled right out of your bed and examined or have the things that people describe. That's a crime against humanity, and when we talk about that, we have to take that into consideration. Go ahead.
I was going to say, but let's say that somebody comes out and says that at any point in time, anybody in the world could be abducted.
Mm-hmm.
What can they do about it? What can they do to stop it? It's one thing. It's to acknowledge the wrong potentially that the person is experiencing. It's another thing to acknowledge that wrong and provide no guidance for what you can do to stop it from happening.
It's tough sometimes. Sometimes it's just the way it is. It's better to have the knowledge so that if there is something you could do, you could prepare yourself to do something if there is. But even if there isn't, I think every human being should know that there's a possibility that thing could happen to you. I mean, how could you walk around if they didn't tell you that lions and tigers were in the forest and just allowed you to go into the forest? That would be a crime against humanity, because you could literally walk in there and get torn to shreds. So is it better that you go have a great time, feel good in the forest, and just be unaware of the dangers, or should you know about the dangers? And I think it's definitely something that everybody should know. Day one is that these things are here. There's nothing that should stand in the way of that.
All right, let's move to a question. This one's for you, Courtney, from JSCO. Earlier in the show, you talked about the fact that religion was brought into it. Are these a religious entity, or along those lines? JSCO wants to know, what if they were religious? What if UFOs?
I'm not sure what that means. Like, what if who were religious, though?
The UFOs, the aliens, the non-biologics.
Do you think that's what that question's asking? Because I'm kind of reading that differently. I thought it was a little bit out of place, and the reason why I thought it was out of place was because she made a jump to a conclusion that if the person was religious and they, had a religious belief system, that these things would stop, and that's not the case. They've done studies on that, and even when people have prayed, that an abduction doesn't stop. So I thought that was a bit of information that was put into the record that wasn't actually factual or accurate.
All right, let's get right to it here with another question. Let's go to Jeffrey. Did the Immaculate Constellation doc admit that we have triangular craft? Analyst specifies that this was a reproductive vehicle, ARV, page 3. Courtney,
no,
it
didn't say. That was one of the confusing things about the 12-page document. It didn't specify whether these ARVs were ours or the RVs were theirs, so that was a confusion.
All right, let's move on to another question. Let's go to Latchkey. Can anyone explain how the hearing witnesses were selected? I'm still trying to figure out how the former NASA guy got a seat at the adult table. Oh. Courtney.
I think that they went to the community of people that they could muster up who were brave enough to testify, because as we've known with these other supposed 40 whistleblowers who haven't been able to get in necessarily to, testify to Congress for whatever reason, I think they went to the people who were credible, who had experience, who were in the government or the military, because that's the top people that they've relied on, is military witnesses or people who are in the government. Now, with Schellenberger, I think that was somewhat of a risk because he was not necessarily from that domain. But I do know Schellenberger was at the last hearing last year, and he's in that community of researchers. And for some reason, somebody gave him this information, so he had it. So I guess he would be an appropriate witness. But at the time when he was announced, I really thought they were departing. So I think that they might not have had enough people, honestly.
I'm going to get you to hold on right there because we are going to go to our final break of the night. We're going to continue with this question from the rest of the panel. Courtney Marchesani, Josh Rutledge, Tim James, and Sweet Robbie G on Spaced Out Radio.
This is Spaced Out Radio and your host, Dave Scott.
All right, we're clear. Hi, Tim.
Hi, Dave.
Someone just said in the chat that it's 100% not true what I just said. And many of the people in the community and the religious community have looked at this, like L.A. Marzulli and other people in the Christian community have reported that the abductions don't always stop. So you can challenge me on that, but I have read up on it and I've listened to some of the theologians, including some people in Tim Burchett's community who talked about abductions and that they don't always stop if there's prayer involved. So I'm reporting from what I've heard from many different resources in the community. So just wanted to follow that up.
I like it. I like it.
Awesome.
You know, it'd be interesting is to find out if there are religions out there where people don't get abducted. We know.
Yeah, I was thinking about that. A couple weeks ago about, we really only hear a whole lot about abductions in North America. I'm sure that there are abductions that happen elsewhere around the world, but are there places where people aren't really abducted from?
I want to know if the Amish are abducted. I want to know if Buddhists are abducted. Mm-hmm. There's only about 4,998 other religions to go. Mm-hmm. But I think
don't get my brother-in-law started on the Amish. He hosts a radio show with my sister on the East Coast. It's a very popular show, and they have a lot of Amish that lives around. He's always complaining about the Amish. And so it's funny. I'll share a little joke with you. He was out somewhere doing a remote, and one of the Amish people came up to him and they were like, "Hey, I listened to you or whatever on the radio." And he pointed back at him and he said, "You're not supposed to be listening on the radio. You're not supposed to be listening to me on the radio. How can you be doing that?" So he's always about the Amish, how they don't have to pay, that they're conscious objectors. He's just very all over the Amish. I don't feel the same way he does, but I wanted to share that little joke. You shouldn't be listening to the radio.
Fun fact: when aliens abduct Amish, they use a cart and buggy. So
that is awesome. Right?
I like that. Yes.
Awesome. Right?
Apparently, they can use other people's electronic vehicles and use other people's electronic, tractors and phones and whatever. They just can't have one. So there's all these red tapes for the Amish, things they can and can't do.
I went to college with a Mennonite individual, and they're like the Amish, but they can also have cars and stuff too. So it's really interesting.
Yeah, we had a lot of Mennonites in Pennsylvania and Amish and Quakers. And so,
Believe it or not, I'm a Mennonite.
Oh.
Are you a Mennonite, Dave?
My mom's side, yeah. Allowed cars, no television, no radio.
No offense against the Mennonites. I'm sorry, Dave.
Something funny.
Unwittingly. I'm so sorry.
Junior hockey, true story. Ontario Hockey League, a player was just suspended for 5 games for calling his opponent player a Mennonite.
What?
Yeah, true story.
Wow.
That's why I'm starting to hate hockey. Is stupidity like that. You Mennonite, 5 games.
Maybe it was the hateful way they said it. Like
Don't harsh out the Mennonites, man.
I will say this about the Mennonite community, though. They're like my mom comes from a real strict sect of the Mennonite community, which is called Haldeman Mennonite. The men all wear beards. The lady wear these black caps to hold up their hair. The ladies can never cut their hair. You always got to wear a dress.
Yep.
Blah blah blah. Fantastic cooks, though.
Oh yeah.
Oh, God.
I love that the Amish have Rumspringa. They have like this time period in the teenage years
Yep.
where you're allowed to just go out and just be a total freak and decide whether you want to go back to Amish, faith or not.
The point that I was getting at, though, and I love that too, by the way, is there are a lot of psychics in the Mennonite community. But none of them will admit it because they think it's blasphemous to God. And only the religious people, like the priests, they will admit it.
Oh, okay.
Okay, but they'll call it more prophet, like
prophecy.
Right. Thank you to all of our incredible super chatters tonight. We really do appreciate the love and support from each and every one of you. Thank you very much. It helps us keep doing what we do on a nightly basis. If you're new here, don't forget to hit subscribe, ring that bell, because we are here 7 days a week for your listening ears. I'm here Monday through Friday. Sweet Robbie G is here Saturdays and Sundays. We got the best thing going here on SOR, so keep tuning in. Here we go. All right, here we go with the final half hour of Spaced Out Radio tonight. My name is Dave Scott. We really do appreciate earning your listening ears wherever you are on this beautiful planet we call Earth. Reminder to all of you that if you missed most of this show or others, you can check out our free archives by going to youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do old Davey the favor, hit that subscribe button. Our website, spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, read the news wire, check out our swag as well. Follow us on X at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on Patreon in the Space Travelers Club. We continue on till the top of the hour on the UFO hearings. Joining us are Josh Rutledge, a great podcaster and part of MUFON in Arizona. We have intrepid researcher Courtney Marchesani, the UFO reports Tim James, and Sweet Robbie G from After Hours on Spaced Out Radio. And right before the break, Latchkey had asked a question about the hearing witnesses. How are they selected? I think Elizondo was a given. You had to go with Gallaudet. They're two of the popular names out there. I would have liked to have seen Carl Nell sit up there. But to me, Matt Schellenberger was a gem, bringing new information, even though he admittedly knows nothing about UFOs or non-biologics. He was just given information and he ran with it. He did what a journalist does. The big question was about Mike Gold, formerly of NASA, formerly of Bigelow Aerospace. He's got a lot of formerlies. And, he was playing the happy to be there card. My follow-up question to the panel is, and I want to keep it short because we have a lot of other questions. Tim, we'll start with you. Do you think that they need to start looking more at who they are bringing in rather than just going with the big ticket names?
Yeah, I would think so. My opinion is okay. So you brought in Lou, and we all understand that, and he's the focus of stuff, and I like Lou. But yeah, I think some other people that haven't been on the stage, so to speak, and there's no preconceptions. We've got somebody that's coming in that's a whistleblower. I think that may be a good idea. I think it adds a little more spice to the pot, and I think that no preconceived notions. We haven't got to know this person, or we think we know this person. So yeah, I think it'd be a good idea.
Courtney, do you think that this was a good panel of guests, or who would you have chosen? Let me ask you that.
Jay Stratton, Lakatsky, the people who were the head, of these different programs or investigations or adjacent.
All right. Rob, who would you have chosen?
That was excellent right there. Lakatsky would have been great. He most recently said that he knows of the fact that they just breached the hull of a UFO. So that's the guy I would definitely want on that panel, so he can answer that question and tell him where that's at. Yeah, I like that.
Who would be your other three?
Other three, I gotta get some experiencers in there, man. I gotta get some experiencers in there because I think that part of the story is missing. I think the Congress needs, I think they're ready for that part of it. So you'd have to bring the aerial school kids. They're at the top of my list. The school kids, the Westall's kids, all the school kids, because mass sighting, adults, kids, and it's documented, and those are the ones I bring up first.
All right, Josh, you're 4.
Yeah. So I think, if you think about, I think the purpose of all of these hearings is because there's a lot of money being spent on projects that Congress has no awareness of. And so it's not necessarily for disclosure, it's for Congress to have awareness and be able to control and influence how this money is getting spent. So from that regard, I think I would want bring Lou back, Grush on the same panel. I think it would be interesting if Michael Schratt could somehow contribute, because he has such a plethora of just knowledge about cases and stuff. Like they go to Michael and say, "Hey, Michael, we're going to do another panel. Give us your top 5 cases that still have like former military as the main contacts in those cases that we could reach out to and maybe get testimonials just like it, or a couple of them to appear on the panel." Because I think the Congress is going to want to hear from former government, former military, active government, active military, those type of people to influence what they're trying to achieve, which is not, again, I don't think they're trying to achieve disclosure. I think they're trying to achieve oversight.
Dave, you need to give me like 2 or 3 more. I only got spit 2 out.
Okay, take it. You got 2 more.
Wouldn't we want to hear from Hal Puthoff, one of the longest running potential UFO, DOD guys? And how about Kit Green?
I would like to have seen them if I were to choose my 4. I think Elizondo had to speak. I think Eric Davis should have been on that panel. I would have liked to have seen them bring in Bill Nelson from NASA, and from a civilian side, John Greenwald from the Black Vault. To me, that would be a great push. I would, if they, and what would make it great is if they could really check into NASA and go into their history. Like, Bill, you're talking about everybody else having these sightings, but you're not talking about any of your own astronauts who have had encounters or close encounters with these craft up in space. They'd have to pressure Bill Nelson. They would have to, but those would be a panel that I would love to watch. And of course, Davis, the Wilson Davis documents are already in as evidence on these hearings. So why not bring in Davis to do the follow-up? That just makes
or the Admiral.
Yes, or Admiral Wilson, one of the two, right? But I'm sure that Davis would probably go in there and plead the 5th on everything.
They all would, Dave. That's why they all would. We wouldn't get anything from any of them. Us as the public, yeah, they'd talk in skiffs, but we wouldn't gain anything from any of those people sitting up there because they wouldn't be able to tell us anything. They wouldn't be able to say it, in front of us. So that's where I'm like, it wouldn't matter who's up there because they'll never be able to tell us what they know.
Well, if I was ever on that panel, I'd answer everything. I'll tell you in a skiff. Dave, what color eyes do you have? I'll tell you in a skiff. Dave,
that's like pleading the 5th for congressional hearings, right?
Exactly. I'll tell you in a skiff. Everything would be, we got to get skiff T-shirts.
I think that's your next T-shirt.
Oh, there you go.
T-shirt. Major Lee has a nice question here. Why was the hearing room audience full of YouTubers and documentary makers? I actually like this question. Who wants to take that one?
I'll go first since I haven't been called first for a while. I'm always the last to get picked in question answering. So, I know how it is. I'm big and I'm slow. I understand how it is. Anyways, I think, I think it was full of those people. If the room was full of those folks because they're the ones covering the topic, right? I mean, if mainstream media, if there was a special Alice, on CNN of the guy Cooper, whatever guy, if he was doing specials every couple of months about the UAP topic, he'd be in the room. But I mean, those are the people that are covering the topic, so it makes sense to have them in the room with everybody else.
I did find it interesting that Jesse Michaels, who many people, including myself, have gone on record saying that we believe he's David Grush's personal handler of this situation for PR, that he was sitting beside Canadian YouTuber Chris Ramsey, who we've got an interview with Chris. We haven't put it out yet yet. We're still working on that. Rob keeps kicking my butt on that, but we will get it out, I promise. But the big thing with that one is, you have Jesse Michaels there with over 1 million subscribers, Chris Ramsey with 7.3 million subscribers on YouTube. That's a lot of pull. And whether our generation, that 40 and up crowd, wants to admit it or not, more people are going to places like YouTube and X to get what they feel is the truth over mainstream media. And this has been brought up a lot recently in North America for media outlets in both Canada and the United States for really not doing their job properly, leaning either side to side politically, which is not a journalist's job. But that could go on a real rant and rave. But most people, they've got it in their head that if this person has 7 million subscribers or 1 million subscribers or 3 million or 18 million plus subscribers, that what they say must be true. Right? And that's the way the new world media has kind of taken off. And that's why you're seeing even not to bring up the results of the last election, but in the election, you saw these candidates go on different podcasts, whether it was Joe Rogan or Theo Vaughn or any of these, because that's where people are watching now. That's where people are paying attention. So, that's kind of my response to it on there. Let's go to another question here. Let's go to Mystic Journeys. What does disclosure look like? Josh, let's start with you.
So I have to be honest. I'm Mystic Journeys. I wrote that question.
Oh,
that's me. But I'll answer it because it's a question that I have.
Hilarious.
It's a question that I have because I think that for everybody, disclosure is something different. And so I think it's a matter of what does disclosure look like to me. I think for me, I think disclosure has already happened. I think it happened in 2018 when the Pentagon came out and said, yep, these videos are real and they're ours. I don't think we're ever going to get anything more than that from the government. But I think that, it's very interesting because we have a bunch of different people pushing for disclosure, but we've never actually defined what disclosure is. And so we won't know when we've gotten there, right? And so, I think it's a really interesting topic to talk about.
All right. Rob, what does disclosure look like to you?
Oh man, disclosure, it's multi-layered because there's different types of disclosure. There's your own personal disclosure, there's governmental disclosure, and then there's extraterrestrial disclosure. That's the one I think is the most important one. Is the government can say what they want. I don't think that they can bring disclosure. So I think disclosure looks like extraterrestrials showing up one day in the sky, mass sighting, maybe something like Phoenix Lights, or something where now we're ready to capture the data as human beings, and we can all at one moment have the realization that things are here visiting us all at one time. I think that for me is disclosure, and I think it's just a matter of time before something like that occurs.
Courtney, how about you?
What does disclosure look like? I think that's the biggest question of all about government part of this, like what we're going to get. And so a lot of people say that even in our own government, we don't know where disclosure begins, whether it's the back engineered craft or it's biologics or it's NHI or if it's the government's criminal activity and the cover up. But I think what disclosure looks like is all of it, right? All of that. That's what a full disclosure to me would be. And Dave and I have talked about this, and we're never going to get it, probably not in our lifetimes, but that's what full disclosure would be to me. Like, what is NHI? Have we back engineered craft? How much money was spent on it? Who was involved in the criminal activity? Maybe they get amnesty, maybe they don't. The whole enchilada. That's what disclosure means to me. And I know we're not going to get it, but I still hold out hope that someday we will get it. With the younger generation, maybe.
Maybe we'll see how it goes. Tim, you got the final word on this one.
Yeah, I'm agreeing with that with everybody. I think that disclosure for me is opening that toy box and dumping the toy box out. And whether it's government, which of course I agree. I don't think that's going to happen, but I do agree with Rob. I think the disclosure part of it is when everything comes out and when they land and go, hey, we're here, that would be disclosure to me. I'm thinking that I'm on a little bit agreeing with you on this too, is that the confirmation side of it is more of what I'm focused on or what I would think would be the disclosure part of it. I just want confirmation because the disclosure will happen when it decides to happen, in my view.
All right, let's move on to another question. We've got about 5.5 minutes left. Doubleday is asking, there was talk of injuries that occurred during crash retrievals, but no follow-up if they were caused by hostile actions. Lou Elizondo had brought this up and was asked about this, and in my opinion, he kind of dodged the question a little bit. They quickly moved on. I think he said he could talk about it in a skiff. Go figure.
Of course.
What? I want to know what kind of injuries they are. Okay, because we do have evidence of people getting hurt. Look at the case of Stephen Michalak of the Falcon Lake incident back in the 1960s here in Falcon Lake, Manitoba, where he had radiation burns. Or there's evidence of this from the Rendlesham Forest case. Courtney, we'll start with you on this one. Do you think that, do you just call up your insurance company and say, I got aliens and, you're going to have to cover me on this?
That's one of the things they're not going to talk about. There's also been rumors and, that we're shooting down, that most countries are shooting, UAPs down or shooting at them, or they have in the past. And so when it comes to the injuries, I'm not exactly sure what that's alluding to. Is it injuries of people on the ground or is it injuries of people that were in the craft? I'm not exactly sure. So I don't really know how to weigh in on it. Although there have been injuries, certainly by people who have been encountered craft. And we also know about Cash Landrum. That's another case where people were injured. They were irradiated. And so I think those things are part of the crimes of the past that don't, that will not be litigated or arbitrated in any way.
Sweets, your thoughts?
Man, it's probably a little bit of both going on there, truthfully, because, you hear about the radiation cases, Rendlesham, and how they didn't, even acknowledge the fact that they were there to give them medical attention. What kind of government does that? Ours. And then, and we've also heard of times where some of these things may have been, affecting people adversely. David Grush even speaks about how people may have passed away at the hands of ETs for whatever reason. So, there's definitely a lot of that going on, I think, more than they want to let us know. And that's just one of the things. I mean, they're going to keep this under wraps forever. So I don't think they'll ever get to a point to where we'll get that answer there unless we see it happen ourselves or we know someone that was affected by it. I don't think that probably ever gets answered.
How about you, Tim?
Yeah, I like it going back, even in history. I mean, World War II, the Korean War, the soldiers, the amount of soldiers that said they'd encountered UFOs and alien beings and stuff like that, and radiation and stuff like that. But the thing that it's intriguing about that is that when, unfortunately, a lot of these old veterans and stuff are dying and have passed away, and their families are telling the stories now, and they were completely ignored by, like Rob said, by the government. Yeah, you're fine, and you're going to be okay. But so many people were affected by this, and it's like I say, what's intriguing is the families bringing the stories out now and saying this is what happened. And yeah, so, and the shooting down part, yeah, I think there's a lot more of that going on, not necessarily shooting down, but I think there's a lot of pot shots being taken at craft as well, right?
Well, of course, because what do we do good? We do good at shooting things down.
Yeah.
We're good at that. All right, let's get one more question in. 90 seconds to go here. See if we can sneak one in. This is from Sierra for Courtney. Do you know what people mean when they say that consent was given in another timeline for abduction to occur?
I have heard some comments by insiders about a couple different things. One, the military and industrial complex potentially abducting people underneath some kind of program or study. But when it comes to timelines, I'm not exactly sure. I have heard about people talk about timelines. I've had people talk about time travel. I've heard about all different kinds of tech where people connect with, the helmet and they connect with the ship. But in terms of giving another timeline approval, I'm thinking you're talking about maybe like a soul contract. But that's all.
Oh, Courtney froze up.
Oh, wow.
She was on a whole contract and froze.
Did I break up?
Yeah, there you go. You're back.
Maybe not. Maybe not. But either way, it's time for us to start to wrap this thing up anyways, because it's been a power show of information, and there's a lot more we could have talked about tonight. One of the things that I think we're going to have to watch in the future, after companies like General Dynamics and Lockheed Martin got called out during this hearing, we haven't heard a thing from them in any response whatsoever. And I don't think we will. However, what it does do is it does attach their names now to the stigma of this cover-up. And it could place a lot more interesting questions moving on in the future. Courtney Marchesani, Josh Rutledge, Sweet Robbie G, Tim, James, and Science Bob, who left a couple of hours ago. Thank you for a wonderful, wonderful show tonight. As we wrap this up, say hello, Mr. Ron Bumblefoot Thal, rocking in the background with Little Brother is watching. Bumblefoot is the official visual Space Out Radio, rocking us in and out of every single show. Get your horns up, guitar god himself. Special thanks to everybody listening in, at work, at home, in your cars, wherever you may be. Thank you to everyone in our chat rooms. YouTube, Twitch, Elga, Facebook, Streaming, LinkedIn, the Space Travelers Club, and on X, hashtag SpacedOutRadio.
I know you're out there somewhere.
Remember, this show is copyright by Spaced Out Radio and S4 Media Ventures Limited. Thank you so much for sharing with us, because together, my friend,
make a mistake. We're watching.
We own the night. Mr. Bumblefoot, we need a favor. We need you to take us home. Yes, the blue train has docked for the night, but soon, my friends, we shall ride again. Seats are always available. Your tickets never expire. And if you want to bring a friend, we've got room for them too. Good night, everybody. And we're clear.
Great stuff. Great.
What's your thoughts on that with the big names being caught up there, Robbie?
With the big names,
Yeah, like Lockheed Martin, General Dynamics, etc.
now we're talking. That's where we need to be talking about, because we know that's where the craft are at. I mean, if we're gonna play this game, let's get to the point. Get to the point. We know where the craft are. Let's get the people to tell us, okay, they're at Lockheed, they're at this place, they're at this place. Now, at the very least, since this all started, all the hearing stuff and just being brought forth, I just hope that somebody within the government or Congress is keeping an eye on these facilities so they don't move the craft to other places. When they do come and finally knock at the door, they don't find an empty warehouse, right? So hopefully somebody's out there keeping an eye on these contractors.
Well, supposedly Russ Colhart has the location of some big hangar where all of these things are being kept, or a lot of these things are being kept. And he has told the people who can investigate it, is the words that he said. So, but he won't disclose to the public. He has to protect his source, right? So he won't disclose to the public where it is, but he's like, yeah, I've told the people who can investigate so they can go investigate. So
I'm glad to hear that. Is that the UFO so big they had to build a building around it?
yeah.
Okay, good. Because I criticize him about that. I'm like, dude, if you know where that's at, someone else needs to know that information. So I'm glad he's done that. That's good for him.
I think it's going to be interesting to see if any of these companies respond, because they were paying attention. And if they weren't paying attention in tomorrow morning's meetings, it will be brought up that, oh my God, they brought us up. It will be. That's just the way business goes. They're not going to be able to sit idly by this. They may not comment publicly, but you could darn well tell that they're going to be calling representatives like Mike Turner in Ohio saying, what are these new kids doing? What is going on here? Why are we is our name being brought up on this, which everything we do is classified?
Yeah.
Right. And that's the way I think it's going to play out. And we don't have to like it, but that's just the way it is. So there's going to be a lot of phone calls privately tomorrow, at least I think. I mean, I could be wrong. I could be over exaggerating things. They may not even care, because sometimes non-acknowledgement is your best defense.
Yeah.
They do, Joe Monk. They do. Why don't aliens try and retrieve their craft and their people? Or are they just heartless little bastards? I think they do, Joe Monk. I think that matters to them. Some people are like, oh, they're just shells. Their bodies are looked at as what do they call it? Shells, or I'm thinking it's another word they use.
Exoskeleton.
I had
where it's something that doesn't really mean anything, like a what do they? Oh my God!
It's too late. My brain's not working anymore.
Yeah,
this is like 2 p.m. for sweet Robbie G.
Yeah, it is. I'm a late night guy. But yeah, I think they do come back for their crap. I think they probably came here at one point, like, hey, humans might be cool. Let's kind of check them out. And then we started shooting them down, keeping their bodies, keeping their crap. And they were like, dude, we want our bodies back. Like, that's just common sense. So I think that there is something going on there. I don't know what you guys think about that.
If I can sorry, Josh, if I can believe one of my sources who told me that one of the things that is allegedly causing this movement is the fact that and I'm going to go real sci-fi woo here for a second, but please note that this is somebody on the inside who is telling me this, and I always take that with a grain of salt, because I have no other confirmation for it, just the story that I heard. And that is that during the Roswell crash, they allegedly came back and said, we want our people, or our
give us our stuff back.
Our guys back. And that didn't happen.
Yeah.
And so what happened from there was they were pissed off.
Oh, really?
Okay. They were pissed off about it. And that leads to the timeline between 2027 and 2035, which is allegedly why they're coming back. Because the one thing that nobody ever asks on this, and it's been asked very rarely, is why now? I came up with the why now question about 4 years ago. And nobody has ever really given me an answer that I look at that and I say, okay, but there has never been a reason. If we go to new ufology, which started in 2017, there has never been anybody answer the question, why now? Why, after 70 plus years of cover up, is this now an important topic of national security? They denied for decades. They could have kept denying for more decades. Now, we wouldn't agree with that, but let's just be realistic. They could have kept the BS going.
Right.
Nobody has answered the why now.
I think, well, I don't know. I have a theory.
Cool.
I have a theory. So, first of all, to talk about the Roswell piece, real quick, you've heard Project Serpo?
Yes.
Anybody? Okay. So that was supposedly, Project Serpo was supposedly because the Ebens, as we called them, that we took from the Roswell crash, phoned home, and we worked it out to where they could pick up their dead and the ones that we still had alive. And also we could send, 7 people to go and stay with them on their planet for some period of time. But anyways, that's Project Serpo was potentially there from a retrieval perspective. But the other piece is, I think that, I talked about it, Dave, last time I think I was on the show, we were talking about Lou's book or whatever, but, the Brookings report that came out back in the 60s or whatever, I think it was mid 60s, that said that, humanity's not ready. I think that, due to that report, somebody probably put together some sort of a plan for when will humanity be ready. And I think that it seems for us, like we look at it and we say, this just seems like out of place. Why now? But maybe it's just because this is part of the long running project to bring us up to speed, to desensitize us, through media, like TV and movies and video games and stuff, that desensitize us to the concepts so that we'd be more likely to accept the reality. Also, with the idea that we're not likely going to take just a statement from the government as fact. We almost have to catch them in an aha moment. And so it's kind of like a situation where if you want somebody to believe something, try to get them to think they came up with the idea, right? Because then they're more likely to go along with it. And then that's what I feel like is happening here. It's like all this dog and pony show to get us to feel like we caught them in something so that we're more likely to believe the truth when it comes out.
Very well.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's to add to that for a second, let's not also forget the fact that over the next 10 to 20 years, a lot of, and I hate to put it this way, but if we look at the Western side of Europe and North America, a lot of people who are very strong, devoted, religious people will be dying due to age or
Sure.
whatever.
Yeah.
That 65 and up crowd, which keeps a lot of their faith still very public and open, whereas the younger generations, like I look at my daughters, my kids span between 11 and 25 years old. I got 2 daughters, 1 son. Okay. And I look at them, they are more spiritually open to anything, like to them, seeing Jesus would be the same as seeing an alien.
Yeah.
And they're cool with both. And I think with those younger generations being a lot more open-minded and accepting, I think that comes into the plan too. Now,
Yeah.
that's my hypothesis, okay, but there's not going to be anything blocking their attitude because the Bible says this, or the Quran says this, or other religious texts say something different, that anything from the stars is evil and we need to get away from it, and so on and so forth, right? And it's not that they're deterring away from God. What they are is deterring their way from mainstream religion. Now, a lot of people do not like me saying that, and I apologize. Okay, as someone who had a really weird religious experience just a couple of nights ago that I haven't even told our audience about yet because I'm still processing it. Tim knows. I told him about it. And but it's very, very open to the fact that there is something out there that the younger generations are more adept and keen to be accepting of what's going on. They're more peaceful. They're less violent than the older generation. Just my thoughts.
Yeah. I just don't know, man. It's going to be a different place once we get disclosure. So I don't know how all that plays in. I don't know if being nice is the way to go. Hopefully it is. Hopefully that's what they are. They're nice too. Hopefully it's all love out there. But if it's anything like here out there, we got some work to do here. Yeah.
Well, I mean, and would we treat them the same, right? We can't even get along with each other. How are we going to incorporate a whole nother alien race into our civilization? So, is it going to be like, what's that, the movie District 9, where the aliens land and we put them in internment camps and everything else, like it's, who knows what we would do as humans. So like, maybe that's what they're waiting for us to realize that we're part of something bigger, like Dave, what plays in the beginning of your show, the quote from Reagan around, how much our differences would pass away if we knew that we weren't alone in the universe. So.
Yeah. And I think, I don't know if I said this on the show we were on last, but I know I've said this recently, which is, what if these aliens, what if they're looking at human beings as like a parasitic species? Like, what if they look at us as parasites and they just want to contain us to this planet? You know what I mean? So we don't get out there and infect the rest of the universe. I could see that. Sadly, I could see that.
In the movie The Matrix, that's, the way he describes humanity as a virus, that spreads to new places, and then once it's used all of its resources, it spreads to another place. And
that's us. That's why I say we don't fit into this plan. We don't fit in. We're draining it dry of everything, of oil, of everything. Just on every level, we are really exploiting this planet, and really, we're just not nature beings. It's weird. It's really weird to even say it and think about it like that, but we are. And unfortunately, hopefully we can change that. I mean, we've seen enough good out there to know that if that overcomes our natural instinct, that we could be, these ascended beings, man. I hope we can really get there. That's why I strive to be a good person every day, put that energy out there, because I have faith that we could do that and we can be that. So,
yeah, and it's certainly a grassroots movement, right?
It is.
It really is.
It is.
If you don't think that you can make a difference, change your mindset.
And I had somebody told me that outlook was pie in the sky, and it was before I started my show. It was like when I first started, but I was like, nah, I can't. I can understand why you would say that based on everything else that goes on, but I won't know until I'm done trying, right? I won't know until my last day. That's what I'll know it didn't work, or that my work didn't matter, or you know what I mean. But till then, You got me trying to move the needle, man. That's it every day.
You have to.
Absolutely.
You have to. I mean, if you don't continue to move the needle, and look, I feel for people who are pissed off. I get that same level of frustration that everybody else does, that it was a nothing burger. It was, another day of them giving us nothing and a waste of time, a waste of taxpayers' money. I get all that. I really do. And I feel for people, because people do want answers and people want the truth on everything. But I also understand that, and not to quote Elizondo, but I'm going to say something that he always says: this is a marathon. This isn't a sprint.
Yeah.
And whether we like it or not, there is no way in hell that the U.S. government, or which literally controls 90% of the countries on this planet, is going to sit there and say to Canada, the UK, Great Britain, Australia, France, Netherlands, or whoever it may be, hey guys, you can't say anything about this, or you can't, you can disclose what you have. They're not going to do that.
Yeah.
Now, some countries may say screw you.
Yeah.
But the U.S. government wants these toys for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And if we can take into the consideration, I'm not going to say fact, but consideration, that they could be up to 100 years ahead in technology right now. I had one friend tell me from the inside, he told me this. He said, Dave, we developed stealth technology in the early 1960s. The Russians and Chinese didn't get stealth technology until about 10, 15 years ago.
Oh, wow.
He goes, what do you think we have now? Do you think we're really worried about their stealth technology when we're already way beyond that? Now, if you think about that for a second, and if that statement is even 50% true,
right,
what the hell is going on out there? Okay, what do they have? I mean, they're dealing with George Jetson type shit here. Okay, that's the reality of it all. And I think we have to, we're caught in this conundrum where we're trying to think of tomorrow's technology with today's mind.
Yeah.
And their tomorrow is decades. Our tomorrow is literally tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's, I can't remember the guy's name, but, but the Skunk Works guy that said that, we helped ET go home or something like that.
Yeah, we already have the technology to take ET home again.
Take ET home, so
been rich. Yep.
Why would a Skunk Works guy make that claim without, that seems like an honest brag, in my opinion.
100%. And at that point, he also stated that they were like 50 years ahead. That's 30 years ago. So if we're now 100 plus years ahead, where is that really taking us?
Yeah.
Look, Robbie. I had the legend Jim Goodall on about a month ago, maybe, and I had this conversation with him because, we hear that often from him that Ben Rich made that statement, and a lot of people look at it as, man, we've reverse engineered this craft. We're so far ahead, further than we understand right now. And I asked him, I said, you know what, Jim, what if it was this? We have the technology to take ET home. I was like, that could be looked at as we've reverse engineered these craft and we can take ET home. Or it simply means that we are in possession of ET craft that obviously have the ability to take ET home. So that statement could apply both ways. And if you listen to Lukatsky talking about we've only breached the hull of a UFO here, then we definitely haven't reverse engineered it. So the likelihood, and then I tied this with him as well. I said, in you're friends with Bob Lazar, and Bob Lazar told you that they were pulling these things out every 10 years to try to figure out the tech. And he said as recently as 2016 that he still thinks they haven't figured it out yet. So the likelihood that that statement that Ben Rich made could have just simply meaning that we as Lockheed have the technology, meaning we have a recovered UFO at our hangar and it has the ability to take ET home. That would still make his statement true in what he said. And then it would also align with Bob Lazar and make his story true. So,
and then it could also be true if ET lives on Earth.
That too. I was like, if you ask the ET to borrow their spaceship, then you too have the technology to take ET home.
Yeah.
Well, and that's a big one too, because next thing you know, Oprah's going to be saying, "You get a UFO, you get a UFO, you get a UFO, everybody gets UFOs,
everybody gets a UFO,
right?" But no, I think it's an important aspect to this entire topic. There's still so many questions out there, but we as a public have to stop getting frustrated to the point where this show me proof. Everybody hates the trust me bro saying, okay, but I'm sick of the show me proof bro saying. I'm tired of it. I really am.
No, Dave.
They're not going to give us the truth.
No,
There are trillions of dollars, trillions of reasons, not billions, not millions, trillions of financial reasons why they are not going to give up the truth. And the only way that I ever see true disclosure happening is if it's catastrophic.
That's what I vote for. Let's go.
Well, it's also, I think Bob said it earlier in the show. What are we waiting for? I guess what I'm trying to get to is, why are we relying on the governments of the world to give us proof? Right?
No.
We have talking about technology, right? We have access to most of the same sensors, maybe not arranged in a certain way, or maybe we don't have the software that the government has in order to process the data, but we have access to most of the same sensors that they would use to capture data as it relates to UAP, UFOs, right? Why are we not, saying, okay, you guys figure this thing out with your spending and how much money is being spent on this SAP, but we're going to go over here. We're just going to stand up our own investigative process. We're going to go to a UFO hotspot. We're going to put a bunch of sensors and probes and everything else there. And we're just going to sit on it for a whole year, collect data, and then go and process the data. Like, why are we waiting for the governments of the world to tell us something that we already know the answer to?
So mommy daddy syndrome for some out there. And we can't, as a community, come together like that, because we should. That's exactly what we should be doing. We have sky watchers. We have all sorts of people who specialize in different areas that if we did come together like that, we have it. That's why we say to humanity, we already have disclosure, because if you sat down with, like I said, I always say kids from aerial school, if you get the experiencers, you get the grassroots scientists, you sit everybody in a room together, and then you realize that you have every element of the story to be able to come out and say, this is disclosure for everyone. But they like the fact that we're separated. And the moment they see us coming together, though, that's when the problem is going to come up.
Well, I mean, we talked a little bit earlier about, who to report your case to, right? So we got New Fork and MUFON, and SCU does one. And then there are people who don't like what they do, so they've started their own investigation process. Like, what does that create for the public? It creates a situation where you don't know where to go to report your case, or there's too many options. You don't know which one's the best one. And so you get frustrated with that process and you just don't report your case at all. We have all this infighting, right, within our community. And as long as we have all this infighting on who has the best technology, who has the best database, who has the best researchers, who has the best investigators, so on and so forth, as long as we have all this infighting, we're never going to make progress as a community. somebody has to be nominated as this is going to be the place where all reports are recorded. And then we're going to outsource investigations to various investigators across various different agencies around, the community. And then, but the bottom line is you go to reportaufosighting.com and you fill out the report, and it all goes into a centralized database. And there's no longer a matter of, I reported mine to New Fork. Well, I reported mine to MUFON. Well, I reported mine to SCU, and nobody's talking to each other.
You know what happens? That's whenever humanity makes a movement like that, because we should be able to, the government always puts together a project Mockingbird or a project whatever that targets that group. It's been done through history. They always do it. They would hack that website and shut it down or erase the data or some sort of behind the scenes project they would create to immobilize that movement. And they do it all.
We'll print them all off and keep them in Dave's shed.
Have dead men switches and
good shed. I have a nice shed.
Yes.
Just move the snowblower out of the way. That's all I ask.
So,
right.
But I mean, I agree that, we have to get out of our own way. And then of course there's always going to be, contentious parties that want to thwart our investigations. But it kind of like, Rob, you were talking about being nice every day. We got to start somewhere. And if we don't ever start, then we can't ever fail. Right. And so we can't take that mentality. We have to start and tackle every hurdle as it comes. If we want to actually get to a point where we know something and we're able to prove it, and maybe even get to the point of being able to predict when the next one is going to occur and be there ready to record the data when it happens.
Yeah.
Gentlemen, I want to get to this one question before we wrap things up here.
Yep.
Okay. It comes from new person to our chat room, Stephen Weeks. Welcome to SOR chat. He says, but are we in search of truth or validation for romanticizing the topic? My feeling on this is, what is truth? Because an experiencer's truth is different from Lou Elizondo's truth, is different from the SCU's truth, to NASA's truth, to the U.S. government's truth, to the Pentagon's truth, to Betty and Barney Hill's truth, to Travis Walton's truth. And I could give millions of examples. So the question that we cannot define in this subject, and I'm saying this after interviewing probably close to 2,000 people on this subject. Well, maybe not that many. That's overall subject, I should say. Okay. We don't know what truth is. We don't know what proof is anymore because of drones, because of AI, because of CGI, because of Photoshop. And if you go into audio, well, audio can be spliced beautifully.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And you get somebody who's really good and technologically advanced. I don't trust a video these days. I want to, but you can't. So the question then becomes, what is truth? Your truth, like, give you an example. Rob right here, that's one of my dudes, man. That's one of my dudes. But his truth is, on many of these topics, is polar opposite to mine. Polar opposite. But that's okay. So what really is true? We don't know.
Like your requirement for truth. Like, I'm a truth guy. I understand what this person is saying. Where it's like just being in love with the topic and the notion of the potential of presence, or knowing the truth of that it's a real thing, right? And I think there is a difference there, because you're gonna have some people who want to see things. Like, for one, we do a show here where if we put on a flyer or thumbnail tomorrow, video proof of ETs, or Jeremy Corbell drops ET video, everybody's gonna show up to see it because people want to see. They want to see the stuff. Now, could they live without seeing it? Sure. but a lot of people are going to line up to see it because a lot of people like to see proof out of A. And that's just like I said, we could be either here or there. You could be like, hey, I'll tell you a story about proof, or I'll tell you a story about an ET, or I'll show you an ET. Which one do you want to go with?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I
Absolutely.
mean, I think also that it comes down to, kind of what you both were saying, but truth is at a very personal level, right? And so each one of us is going to have whatever the proof or truth is for our own journeys and where we are at that point in time. And also the truth that you would accept today may be a completely different truth that you would accept 10 years from now or 10 years ago. So I think of it, it's a very subjective mark that's going to be different for every person, depending on where they are in their life. And I also think that, what I'm talking about, what I'm trying to get to is, it raises a good question. Let's say we can get to the point where we can collect all this data and we can analyze it and we can figure out, we can predict when the next UFO sighting is going to be. There will be some people that aren't ready to process what that means for them and their reality. And so, it's all you can do is say, hey, be here this time, this date, there's going to be a UFO. And maybe the more people that wake up to the reality of their existence, it'll change, different aspects of their everyday life. Maybe they'll treat people differently. Maybe they'll be nicer to everybody. Maybe blah, blah, blah. So I think that bottom line, it's a very good question, but I think it also varies person to person.
I think it does.
Dave, I've got to go.
How many people, Dave, you're an experiencer. We're all experiencers. We've all seen something, right?
That's right.
There's people who haven't seen anything. And those people are vying for something to grab onto. So those people who've seen something can say, yeah, it's nothing. But the people who haven't and need that confirmation, those are the people that would probably like to see something.
For sure.
True.
For sure. All right, let's wrap this thing up. Josh, thank you very much for coming on in. Sweet Robbie G,
Yeah.
You were amazing. The audience will get to see you on Saturday and Sunday, hopefully. Or are you going to be back in the new studio? Or
No, this is digital. I'm not really where you think I am.
Oh, okay.
Ooh, tricky.
Yeah.
Look
Looking
at you.
good, huh? Yeah. Hey.
Robbie G.
Hey.
Screen.
Uh-huh. That's why he has the red chin hair right there.
Yeah, I'm telling you.
Give us
Super
a little
tech savvy.
first, Rob. Give us a little tug there. That's right there. Look
Thanks
at
for
that.
the
That's
tug,
good.
Rob.
This doesn't exist. This isn't real.
Oh, wow. You blew
None
me
of
away.
it's real.
But
What is
Tim,
real?
for being a part of tomorrow night on the show, we're going to continue the UFO talk. Very popular UFO podcaster and YouTuber, Vinny Adams, is going to join us from the UK.
Cool.
We're going to have a lot of fun with him tomorrow night. Big thank you tonight to all of our super chatters. Area 53, Joe, Ken, Search and Destroy ×2, and Walter, Android, Richard ×2, Jason ×5, Latchkey, Joe K, Jobless Guy, Blue Cruise, and Human Carl, Deb ×2 for the lovely super chats. Thank you for the love, everybody. We really appreciate it. We love doing shows like this on special events, and as they occur, we'll do more panels like this as well. Much love from Spaced Out Radio. Take care, everybody. We'll see you tomorrow night, 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern. And if you're new here and you like what you heard, do us a favor, hit subscribe, ring that bell on all of our social media platforms. It helps us grow each and every day. Don't forget to leave a comment below on what you feel this was all about today. Good night.
Stay healthy, my friend.
You too.
If you need bail money, give me a call.
Always, Dad. Take care.
You too.